Bryce, it's a big week. It's a big week. It's a
big week.
Big week full of announcements. I feel like I've only had you on. You've never been here for just like a regular podcast. It's always just like, here is everything. I need you to watch these 6 hours of footage. I need you to read these 600 stories. And then
there's a lot to cover this week, Jeff. So.
There is. So welcome back, everybody, to the Rage Select podcast right here on Rage Select. I'm Jeff.
Hi, I'm Bryce.
And Bryce is back with us again. Bryce, before we jump in to the actual things, what have you been up to over the last, I don't know, how long has it been? 3 weeks since I last talked to you?
Like a month or so. I finished Final Fantasy VII Remake on the live stream recently. That was all right. I really was taken by a wave of nostalgia that I normally don't get. That game's like pretty good. I also just recently finished Life is Strange 2 on the live stream, and man, it is a crime how little attention Life is Strange 2 got. Because I think there was so much noise made about how it's like faux teen comedy writing in the first game.
Yeah.
Where the second game is like very timely. Like, even though this game is like 2 years old, it's very much applicable to the things that are happening in 2020. I mean, the inciting incident of the story is that your innocent father gets shot by a cop in his front yard.
I remember that.
So yeah. It's really great, and it's one of those narrative games where the choices actually do matter long term. Like, you get to the end of the game and it's not just what do you choose, but also like what path are you on? Like, what are the results of all of your actions so far?
So it's less of like the diamond that like The Walking Dead did, where it kind of like spreads out in the middle episodes, but then by the end it all kind of narrows down to there's nothing you could really do in season 1 of Walking Dead to really change what happens at the end. Like, some people are alive, some people are dead, but for the most part it's kind of all the same.
So this is also episodic, like season 1 of Life is Strange was. So you definitely have that, right? There's no getting around it, where just each episode you kind of have to get back to a certain point. But there is, through all of that, and I won't really spoil too much of it or how it works, but through all of that, there are decisions that you're making that are influencing, say, some mysterious number value in the sky.
Okay.
And so by the end of the game, you are given a choice, but also your actions on that number value affect how your choice is kind of interpreted. So instead of having like 2 choices that you would have had either way in Life is Strange 1 at the end, you have 4 possible endings that are influenced not just by you, but by other characters that you've interacted with. And it's really cool. They're very, very wildly different endings.
So when you finished the game, were there like a lot of rats? Or were there just like only a few rats? Was it that the city had been overrun by rats, or that the rat population was under control? Because
you can become the Rat King, and really go to town on the pipe, or become one of many rats. Give your body up to ratdom, and really start the circle of rats all over again.
Fair enough. That's my sequel. That's my unauthorized sequel to The Lion King, is Circle of Rats. They all have Cockney accents. It's going to be great. I actually watched The Old Guard last week on Netflix, because there are no action movies, because the cinemas are, I don't know. I don't even know what's going on out there. I'm not going. But it was okay. It was one of those things where it was a little muddled in that, like, the concept of it is that they've got all these immortal soldiers that have been around for hundreds of years, and they're never really clear why they're soldiers, like why they don't just become bankers and change the world that way. And they're like, killing people for hundreds of years hasn't worked. And I'm like, you could be president, but it's got
this his oldest profession, Jeff, killing people.
That's right. But it's funny because I feel like they made a little bit of a mistake where they've got like, okay, 4 people that have been alive for a zillion years, and like, what does that do to a person, yada yada yada. But then it's like the whole point of the movie is that there's a new immortal person who just came right now, and they're kind of like a POV character, but they never really focus hard on either one of those stories. Like the POV character gets some lip service to like, you're going to grow old and all your family's going to die and you're going to get to watch everybody you love die, so you need to disconnect from the world. But that's never really, it's like they say that twice, but they never really get into it. And then on the other hand, you've got, we've been alive for all these years and we're all tired of humanity and what's happening, but they never really get into that either. So there's some like good action in between. There's some characters that do some flip-flops for what seems like no good reason, where it's just like, I'm the bad guy, now I'm a good guy, or am I? Yes, I am. The end. And it's like, okay. Like,
interesting. Yeah, I was really excited to see that because I think the concept is interesting. It's based off of a graphic novel, I believe. And I don't know, like it seems bad. It seems like what is the other Netflix action movie that Six Underground, Sixth Avenue, something like that?
Six Underground?
Where it just seems like, look, here's a big summer action movie. Just have at it. Just go do it. And so not surprised that maybe it's not the is it setting up for like a sequel? Do you think that's what it is?
I think so. I think it's setting up for its own
older guard.
Yeah, I don't know. What I know is that I feel like the better action movies on Netflix are ones that I feel like a lot of people aren't watching. Like the Extraction with Chris Hemsworth. That was like a great movie where he's like a mercenary who's kind of tired of life, and there's like this young boy in India that gets kidnapped by like a organized crime father's like rival, and they just send this guy in, and it's like this high octane. He's got to get this kid and like get out of this town run by this criminal gang, and it's great. There was also another one, I can never remember what it's called, that had Ben Affleck and like. It had Ben Affleck and like a bunch of other high-profile people, and it was a bunch of ex-soldiers who decide to rob a drug lord, and it's very like gritty, and it was very good.
But not the Expendables, but like
Triple Frontier. Triple Frontier.
And that's the one that takes place in South America, right? I've seen the trailer for it, I think.
That one also does, though, turn into a little bit of a slog towards the end. But it's got, like, Oscar Isaac and Charlie Hunnam and Pedro Pascal. I mean, it's got, like, a huge cast of people. And I felt like when I heard about it, it had been out for 3 months. And I was like, why have I never heard of this? And then I tell other people, and they're like, I have no idea what the hell you're talking about. So, I don't know. Also, season 3 of Young Justice is the absolute and total bomb, and I love it. I've loved every season of it so far, but I finally got through the 3rd season last week, so... But let us not stand on ceremony. We have our thumbnail clickbait out of the way. It's time to talk about Ubisoft. We had the first annual Ubisoft Forward official live stream where we showed off everything Ubisoft. Before we get into it, Bryce, I want to know, like, what is your general Ubisoft attitude, thought? Like, are you pro? Are you anti? Are you neutral? Like, trending towards hungry? I don't. Any of these?
I have a long and negative history with Ubisoft. In general, I think they've been rather anti-consumer, especially kind of in early days in the past, I don't know, decade or so, in terms of DRM and monetizing games and then you look into their game design, and it's not. I'm not appalled at their game design, but it's their choices and games that on paper I don't love. Right, I don't love the idea of like, we'll just make a world and you make up the stories. Especially when you still have to sit through their stories and the stories are not great. But that said, I think that they make very, very what's a good word? Very tactile games, or games that are just good to play. They're good processes to play, right? Like, I think that's why Assassin's Creed and like you look at Watch Dogs 2. Watch Dogs 2 is really, really fun, and that's a very good game if you play that game on mute and you don't watch any of the story stuff, because the story is awful and it doesn't really make a lot of sense, and it doesn't ever. Like, it's not well told, but it's fun and it's good. It's a good open world. So I am conflicted in that way. But in general,
I have to jump in here because I love Watch Dogs 2. Like, I'm curious to know. It's been a while since I played it, but like I actually liked it for the story. And it actually, one of the reasons that Watch Dogs Legion in this trailer has started to lose me a little bit is because I felt like in Watch Dogs 2, it was one of the few games that they made that hewed more to like old Assassin's Creed or Hitman, or one of those things where it's like you're kind of in this world and you can do things in certain ways. And this time it's like, well, an army has invaded and you've got to go beat up that other army. You got to go beat up the bad guys. Where I liked the kind of theming in Watch Dogs 2 about this kind of tech giant, and the way that the main character had been profiled by like this kind of data intrusion and forced into kind of this life of hacking. I really liked all that stuff, as opposed to Watch Dogs 1, which was just like, the mob killed my sister's kid and I gotta get the mob with cyber hacking. So
yeah, I think that stuff is, I think you're describing all of the best parts of Watch Dogs 2, right? Like Watch Dogs 2, except for the story is whatever passable, except for the late game turn about one of your friends who they don't really promote on the box of the game for reasons. There's a turn in that game, and up to that point, you really have a lot of freedom in how you want to solve things, right? Do you want to go in being very violent? Do you want to go in very lethal? Do you want to go in quiet, non-lethal? Like, I think all of that is really, it showed a lot of respect to the players in terms of how they wanted to play, right? Like, I played Watch Dogs 2 non-lethally, and granted, it looks almost exactly the same as if they were lethal rounds, except there's like no blood, but I had the choice and I felt better about it. Which is why, like, I look at Watch Dogs Legion and I look at how for the whole like non-protagonist thing, right? You can be one of anybody in the city. Mm-hmm. Like, I think that's going to make the story even more guided and even more direct into, no, there's going to be violence, and I feel very weird about that. I also don't understand the tone of this game.
Yeah, the thing is that I feel like at a certain point in Watch Dogs 2, I stopped doing anything with my avatar. Like, I would just send in my little droney drones to sneak around and steal the data. Like, if I did have to get through people with guns, there was a certain point where it was just an option to be like, I'll just call the cops, and then the cops show up and get into this like giant shootout, and I'm just like, oh man, that's looks like a bad place to be. I'm glad I'm not over there. And then just walk in when everybody's dead, take the USB stick or whatever. Whereas this one, even when they were showing in the not this like stylized intro, but in the actual gameplay, they were like, you can be a drunk guy that beats people up. You could be John Wick. You can be a person with a drone that jumps up on people and like beats them up. Or you can be a guy with a big wrench and a nail gun that like beats people upside of the head. Or you could be like a grandma with a gun.
He had that huge wrench, and it still took him like 8 clocks to the dome to like really bring that guy down. Like, what? Okay, all right.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I guess the thing, I'm still really interested. This is the only thing that Ubisoft showed that I'm like really, really interested in. I'm just a little worried that I liked Watch Dogs 2 because it felt like the way I handled the situation was there were a lot of different options, and it was always my choice as to what I wanted to do. Like, if I wanted to go sneaky and non-lethal, I could totally do that. Most of what I've seen here has been some version of lethal, and I'm curious. The only one they didn't is they did show one scenario where you could literally recruit people that are in one of the cops. Yeah, one of the bad guy PMC cop guys, and then they could just kind of walk in and do stuff. And I'm like, well, because I don't know. I mean, I think that there's something really empowering. I think it's one of the reasons why the Assassin's Creed franchise has lost me, is that everything in Assassin's Creed is now solved with some form of sneak up and stab that dude, run up and punch that dude, some variation of kill that guy and then get to the exclamation point that's on the map. Whereas I've always thought Assassin's Creed Brotherhood was my favorite, because by the time you assemble that like group, you don't have to do anything. You could have your little assassin minions do everything, and so you never even have to get your hands dirty. You could just throw money on the ground to distract somebody and then get somebody else to do it for you. And I don't know. I'm again, I think that Ubisoft has really expanded most of their games to be some version of soldier does violence, kills person, because of the reasons of this, whatever this story is. And one of the reasons I liked Watch Dogs 2 was because I felt like there was less of that than there was in the previous game. And this feels like there's more of that than in Watch Dogs 2. But I don't know. It's the only, like I said, it's the only thing that I'm really super interested in that they showed. But
I'm just so I guess cautious about the story of Watch Dogs Legion, only because it is a very timely story about police brutality, about militarization of police, about the pervasiveness of technology and surveillance. And I don't look at Ubisoft games and think, okay, I walked away from that story feeling like you really had something to say about it. Even Watch Dogs 2, like Watch Dogs 2 has like a couple of really great gems of scenes where you're like, oh no, like we're talking about Silicon Valley and race and the culture here, and you like just really great scenes that never got further than that. And I don't know if that's because Ubisoft is in this like we're actually being apolitical, whether that's all marketing huff or if that's like an actual decision from the storytelling side. But I think it feels very of 2020 to do this game, and I don't know that it's going to do anything to push culture forward, or I don't know, the international conversation about police brutality or technology forward in 2021.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I haven't played Watch Dogs 2 since it originally came out. Like, I kind of marathoned it, and I have these really good memories of it. But even when I was thinking about this footage and what I thought about it, I was like, maybe I don't actually remember Watch Dogs. Maybe what I'm remembering is what you described of like the there's like a dozen really high points where the game is doing something where I'm like, wow, I've never seen a game do this before. Whereas, in the trailer for this, they literally have the bad police faction, but then they also have the organized crime cyber human trafficking faction. And I'm like, I remember that mission from Watch Dogs 1 where there was like a big warehouse and a bunch of people like standing up on like weird pedestals, and they were being auctioned off as like sex slaves to rich people. And I'm like, that's just the same thing over again. And then I think to Watch Dogs 2, and I think the scene you're describing where the main character goes to his friend that works at Google, and there's all these conversations about race and tech and stuff like that. And it's just like, no, but this time you can play as a drunk guy. And then he punches people, and then he gets too drunk, and he falls over. And I'm like, okay, all right.
Yeah.
Which
it'll be really interesting to see once this game kind of is in the hands of more people about what is if the whole pitch is like you can be anybody who you see walking on the street, if you can recruit anybody and have them be a playable avatar, like where do you compress that, right? Like, are there archetypes? Are there it looks like on one of these screens that they showed, like there's probably like 20 or 30 icons of people you can be. Do we just smash those down to like, now you've unlocked the Mohawk guy, now you've unlocked construction worker? Like I want to know what that looks like, because I'm guessing it's going to be more like that, where there are archetypes of people rather than say like Borderlands, where you have procedurally generated NPCs.
Right. I get the feeling, I mean, from everything that I've read about it, I get the feeling that what you're going to be ending up with is like 4 or 5 different classes, essentially. Melee, guns, tech, stealth, that kind of thing. And then I'd be willing to bet that the way that they're going to try to differentiate it is that the skill trees will branch, and that by branching you will specialize one person. Because like the way that this very obvious John Wick character is fighting in this trailer is different than we've seen, from the nail gun guy in the beginning, who also has a kind of a ranged weapon and a melee weapon. So, I don't know. I also it's funny because this kind of ties into a little bit to Far Cry in some ways, where I know a lot of people that in Far Cry 5, one of their biggest problems was that the main character had was voiceless, was kind of a cipher, because we don't connect as well to characters that are very generic. Like I don't know. I wonder what it's going to be like. And by the way, I should just note, in case there's anybody that's been listening that's all like, I feel like in a lot of cases the question about video games is not like, what does this video game have to say about our world today, but like you did that, Ubisoft. Like, you were the one who decided to set your game and like put it in that time period. So, if you want to make a fantasy, I'm not asking what For Honor is trying to say about the world here, but when you're like, the police have taken over.
Vikings and samurai are metaphors. Like, no, you said it in like the near future. Yeah, like absolutely. It's because I think, one of the makers of, was it Battlefield or Call of Duty? This was like a year or so ago, saying like, yeah, our war game is not political. I was like, yes, it is. War is inherently political, and you have to accept that. You maybe don't have to take a side, or you can say there are multiple sides. This is a multifaceted perspective, but the one thing you can't try to scoot by is like, oh no, this war game is apolitical, especially if you're basing it off of like real countries, real events.
Yep, I agree. Well, speaking of real war, let's talk about Brawlhalla. No, let's talk about okay, they had a bunch of different things. Actually, if you wanted real war, you've come to the right place when you come to the Ubisoft press conference, because it's just about everything else in here. Actually, no, that's not true. Some of this stuff is kind of different. But they did spend a few minutes talking about how Rainbow Six Siege is going to just go on forever and keep getting content updates. And of course it is. They would never shut down this thing. It's like a cash cow. It's Counter-Strike.
It's like a hugely popular and like organically popular game, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't know much about Siege. I've seen friends play it. I know that I've got friends who like love playing it, and I don't know. I say organic only because I don't know of like any huge tournaments or any. I don't know enough about the esports side of it, but I guess by not knowing a lot of esports side, I guess I bias my thinking that there's not much of a huge official esports push, which I'm sure is not correct at all. But it feels like it is a good game that is popular because it's a good game.
Yep, I think. I
feel like can we cut all of that? You're gonna get a lot of emails about everything I just said.
I don't think we have that many people listening to Rage Select that are just like super into Rainbow Six. They all got mad and left a long time ago. I don't know. I mean, to me, it's just like Ubisoft does this thing where they make like their version of another game, and to me, this is their version of. It's just Counter-Strike. But more technical. There's more stuff in it than Counter-Strike, so.
And it's a very interactive space, right? You're in these buildings, and you have a lot of, fortification options, destruction options.
Yeah.
And I think it's cool. Like, it feels different than other shooters that I've seen out there now, especially ones that have this large competitive fan base.
Yeah. And there's no way in hell I'm going to play this game. Or probably for that matter, let's knock out some of these phone games. Well, let's talk about Brawlhalla. I don't play Brawlhalla. It's Crash or Smash, Smash Bandicoot, whatever it's called, whatever you kids are playing these days. It's like Ubisoft's version of Smash Brothers that you could totally download and play for free, and then get Jake from Adventure Time and a bunch of other characters in. It's coming to iOS. It's coming to phones. So
cool.
Hooray.
It seems like they show off all of the like on-screen controller options, and it does seem like you can really customize it in a pretty good way, which is what you want if you're trying to say like, hey, we have this game that we think deserves to be included in the conversation with the fighting game community, with the fighting games ecosystem. So that is a good indicator that they take it seriously. I don't know jack shit about Brawlhalla. It looks like I don't know. I mean, it looks like any number of couch co-op melee games, but like good on you. Like, go for it.
Yep. And then we also got what is that? Might and Magic, the Era of
Chaos.
Era of Chaos, which frankly, yeah, I don't think I had even ever heard of. This looks like just some phone game. You know what? This
is it a card game? I watched this, and now that I guess it was a very short segment, but I don't know what type of game this is. Is this an RTS?
You know what? I bet this is some of that Raid Shadow Legends bullshit. It's you got a bunch of
it's a MOBA. It looks like a MOBA.
Yeah, you've got a bunch of little characters, and then that you get the big streams of enemies, and you've got a certain anyway. Who cares? It's just another phone game. It's another medieval phone game with like a really well produced trailer that has nothing to do with what the actual game is. The same way that I didn't know if this game was out, but this Tom Clancy's Elite Squad thing, which is the only thing outside of Ghost Recon that's had Sam Fisher in it for years.
Yeah, very surprised to see the Sam Fisher goggles at the end, because I thought, this is like Hyper Cityscape, whatever their new Battle Royale game that just came out is, because I hadn't seen any of that either. So I thought, okay, this is what it is, right? It looks like Overwatch. It's very cartoony. They're clearly heroes. But no, this is like a Tom Clancy branded hero shooter.
Mm-hmm. Like a lot of the characters in the game are the characters from Rainbow Six Siege. See, this is why you have to play Rainbow Six Siege, so that you know who all the characters are. And like some of them are Ghost Recon characters. Like the character that they're breaking out of this prison is the bad guy from Ghost Recon Wildlands. Sam Fisher is in there. It is obviously, what's that phone game, the Star Wars one where it's like you got to collect all the heroes, like Galaxy of Heroes or whatever.
That sounds right.
I get the impression that it's kind of like that. It's going to be a free-to-play phone game. You're going to want to try to get all your favorite Ubisoft people. Rayman is going to be in there with a gun at some point. I don't know.
Hell yeah. Okay, I'll play that. I'll play Rayman with a gun. Give Rayman a gun. He's got the best hitbox.
Just Dance, like just white silhouette Just Dance, but with like a machine gun shooting at some terrorists or something. I don't know. Well, the funniest thing I thought is at the very end, they're like, pre-order now, and you can get a generic 1911. I'm like, the most generic handgun and that's in every single video game. If you pre-order, you could totally get this weapon. It's like, I don't know.
Well, it's a tier 2 weapon, right? It's a green, so obviously
MMOs, what have you done? What have you done to us all, MMOs? All right, so we got all that crap out of the way. We did see Hyperscape. Have you played Hyperscape yet?
I have not. Have you?
Jason Murphy and I played it yesterday. By the time this comes up, there'll be a video up for it. It's interesting in that it's different. There's no. It's all in one big city, so there's no like forest or whatever. It's like one huge city.
It is a battle royale.
It is a battle royale. You get 2 guns. If you pick up more versions of the same gun, it just makes that gun stronger. You also get 2 cyber powers, so you can do things like create a wall or wrap yourself into a giant cyber ball and bounce and hit people, or heal, or like shockwave. There's a bunch of different like hack powers that you can pick up that allow you to kind of have like a magic component, which I think really differentiates it. And then it's very vertical. Like there's these big jump pads everywhere, and you end up jumping on top of these buildings and kind of running from building to building on the roofs. Jason and I got killed.
It stands up? Do you think it stands up to the millions of battle royale games that are out there now?
I think it does, because it's okay. So the only thing I would compare it to would be Apex, but it's a lot more kind of like futuristic than Apex, because Call of Duty has the kind of Call of Duty fragility where you die really quickly. Fortnite is all about the building. PUBG is bad. And
PUBG is very like gunplay focused. Yeah.
So this one's very like, it's very slick. It's very fast. They also have a really interesting system where when you die, if your whole team doesn't die, you basically can run to the death point of any other person in the game and stand at it and then ping your team to come bring you back to life. So anybody that dies drops this crystal on the ground, and you can't use your own crystal, but you can, as a ghost, go to another crystal and then just be like, hey, come get me. And your team can come resurrect you there. And you can see the other members of your team that are dead. So you could just in fact, I don't know. At this point, the video's already up, but Jason and I both died, and there was one person who knew how to play the game that was left alive. And so we both went. I was standing on the same point for 5 minutes, and then Jason was like, I want to try that. And so I moved off of it, and he stood on there, and immediately the guy came over and brought him back to life, and I was still dead. I was like, screw you, Hyperscape. But no, I mean, it's different. It's very much a battle royale, but it kind of has a different feel to it. It's very fast. It's very... slick in a way that I feel like the fastest game out there right now is Call of Duty, and this feels kind of on that 60 frames per second super slick tip, but then it's also got the powers part of it where you could, invisibility. Also, it has a Twitch integration thing where if you hook it up to your Twitch channel, it'll throw out votes for your Twitch followers to vote on things to happen. So they'll be low gravity mode or hyperspeed or whatever for 5 or 10 seconds.
That's interesting, because when I think about a game like this, I think that even if you're not playing in a tournament at any given time, that your standard form of play should still be competitive. Mm-hmm. And I feel like saying oh, well, I'm going to go play, and because I'm on Twitch, people can give everybody low gravity, whatever, even if they're neutral effects. That feels proprietary is not the word for it, but it feels non-standard in a way you wouldn't think of standard gameplay to be for a battle royale.
Mm-hmm. What I'm curious about, and I don't know the answer to this, is whether let's say that 4 different people were all streaming it at the same time, if their Twitch bot is smart enough to essentially aggregate
pool those votes.
Yeah, pool all those votes together to see what happens. But I don't know. It definitely seems, I mean, it's one of those things where, like most battle royales, I'm like, if it's free, sure, I'll give it a try. These all battle royale games at this point are too fast for me. I just can't. I can't aim fast enough. You know what? I'd be really interested in playing this on consoles, because we played the PC beta that's out right now, and I just can't hang with mouse and keyboard anymore. It's too fast. I start getting shot. You've got 2 seconds to figure out where you're getting shot and either shoot back or die, and I'm just not fast enough. Whereas everybody with their thumbs on their sticks, it's a little bit more forgiving. Don't at me. It is. It is. I'm sorry.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But yeah, it seems all right. I mean, again, it's one of those things where, of course, Ubisoft wants a battle royale game. They've got the Division 2, For Honor is still going. They've got Rainbow Six. They've got all these live service games out in the world. Of course, they're going to throw something like this together, fund it, give it a couple years, and see what happens. Because it doesn't take a lot of people playing. I mean, as long as there are enough people to keep the matches going, then it's probably enough to keep 1 or 2 devs and a QA person working on it for the price of the microtransactions that the people that actually care about the game put back into it.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you have a game where you can get people interested in the heroes or the archetypes of characters, get people interested in cosmetics, my understanding is that this is kind of all takes place in a simulation, so there's a sports sort of vibe to it, or a competition sort of vibe, mm-hmm. Which is, I think, appealing to a good number of people in terms of making your character look unique. If it's good, it'll float. There are just so many out there right now that it's going to float or sink really quickly. They'll find it one way or the other really quick.
It's also worth noting that when we played it, there were a lot of the city is very well. Actually, okay, I can't actually answer that because Jason and I always went to the same place because there's a location called the food court, and we always wanted to go to the food court and make food court jokes. So, but the food court, the city did not seem to be wildly different in the way that it looked. It definitely looks different in different places, but it's all kind of a semi futuristic city that gets kind of moved around a little bit and reconfigured. Like there's nothing like in Fortnite, the way that the different places look is like drastically different. You'll have, desert biome, a forest, a full city, like, a factory, and they're all very different. So I don't get the impression that this cost a whole crap ton to put together. And let's see, last but not least, was there more? Oh, yes, there was definitely more. I tell you what, let's save Assassin's Creed for the very end because there's not a lot in this Far Cry 6 trailer, the cinematic trailer that came out. There's a new Far Cry. Let's get set in Cuba or some variant thereof. And you're playing as the son of a warlord who's being played by Giancarlo Esposito of Breaking Bad and I guess Mandalorian fame as well as other things.
That's right. I watched it's all cinematics and like they do this like very like Narcos kind of title sequence thing, which it looks very pretty and it's an interesting kind of conversation he has with his son in the story cinematic whatever. This is another one where, Ubisoft writing a game about revolution and overtaking, a literal dictator, and I wonder what they're going to do. Because I look at Far Cry 5, and I don't know that Far Cry 5 really lets you feel smart when you're taking down the cult, right? I was watching with a friend the other day, and like the end of the game just feels like so ridiculous that I don't know how you could look at that as any sort of actual text on, cults. It's just a framing device for probably a fun, cool game.
Far Cry 5 was the last game where I almost talked about this I was talking about The Last of Us 2, where it's like, fuck you, Far Cry 5. Because both of Far Cry 5's endings are bad. And the quote unquote good ending is that you have to just walk away and not arrest the guy that's been kidnapping people and drugging them and putting them to work in his religious cult. That is the good ending. You have to not play Far Cry 5. Like at the very beginning, when the guy asks you to cuff the Reverend, you can turn around and walk away, and the game's like the end. And that is technically the good ending. And I'm like, fuck you, Far Cry 5. Like the guy was kidnapping people, drugging them out of their minds, and pressing them into service for his like fucking weird cult.
Enslaving them, killing them, brainwashing them. Like this is not like, oh, we all wear robes and eat cookies. Like, nah, man, this is like some real bad shit. You're just gonna let him go?
Yeah.
Like,
and then
okay. And then how far? Can we talk about the other thing in the end of Far Cry 5? Because like.
Yeah, skip forward if you don't want to hear it. Like, I don't want to hear it.
Skip over like a minute or two.
Yeah.
The alternative is like you take them out and then they detonate a nuclear device, and also the leader like locks himself in a bunker with you and like keeps you hostage. Like what a nuclear device that is not mentioned anywhere else in the story comes out of nowhere. Only exists to, I guess, set up the post-apocalyptic spin-off that they did from 5. So
let me to jump in. Just because I don't want people to come into the comments. I do want people to come into the comments, but like people have pointed out to me 100 times that if you like listen to the radio in the game and you read some of the stuff, there's like relations between the United States and Russia have broken down, and oh my God, there might be a nuclear war. His whole thing is that he knows that this war is coming, and so he's trying to put the people in the bunkers, in the big silos that you have to destroy to quote unquote keep them safe. And I'm like, yes, but fuck you, video game. Like that doesn't track.
That's
like,
not how society works, dog.
Right? Yeah. And then at the end of the game, when you confront him, he's like, maybe you are the one who is the evil murderer. And I'm like, no, I didn't enslave anybody with drugs, asshole. Like,
well, Jeff, to be honest, patriotism is kind of a drug. So,
okay,
sure. Something to do with that. Yeah. So I look at this and I look like, oh, revolution in this. You said this takes place in Cuba. Like, it's this beautiful. Is this beautiful sort of story, and I think like Far Cry 5 spends a lot of time trying to give you perspective on the villains, and I think this gives you a really good perspective on like, hey, if you were a dictator of a South American country, like how would you look at your relationship as the leader versus the people you are responsible for, controlling, whatever.
Yeah.
That's cool. Giancarlo Esposito is incredible.
I'm really hoping that this represents a throwback to Far Cry 4, because Far Cry 4, I thought, had a much better story about how, like, nobody's the good guy, because there's the ending where if you just sit at the table, like Pagan Min tells you, he's like, here's the country, I'm leaving, your request is completed. Bye-bye. And if you do, like, I feel like people remember that, but they also don't remember that there's this weird moral choice you have to make between the brother and the sister who run the resistance. Like, the brother, one of them wants to sell opium that they've made in the country in order to fund the revolution. And then, like, the other one has a different thing where they're like willing to let anybody's lives be sacrificed as long as the revolution is able to go through. And you literally over the course of the game have to make these branching story decisions about which one of these two are you going to side with. And the game is very clear about how, like, yes, this person is trying to get Pagan Min, this horrible dictator, out of power, but they want to do so by selling drugs to the United States so that they can buy guns from Russia to, like, start an uprising. And you're like, oh, you've got a little meat on your bones, don't you, Far Cry 4? And then Far Cry 5's like, maybe you're the bad guy. And I'm like, no.
Obviously, I'm not.
Like, in 4, yes, you could make the argument that maybe I am the bad guy because I picked the sibling who wanted to, who got a bunch of people killed because they were like revolution at all costs, and like there was a better way. So I'm hoping that this represents them going back to that, because also I'm really hoping that because we see the kid who I'm assuming is the main character, that we're not silent protagonist, because one of the biggest problems of Far Cry 5 is that your character has virtually zero input on what's going on. And so there's like, at least to me, there was a disconnect, because it was like, I feel like I would have something to say here. I feel like any human being would have something to say here, instead of just like, okay, Gordon Freeman me that gun and I'm going to go do it. All right, and we have one more thing left in this Ubisoft conference, Bryce, and that is Assassin's Creed Vikings. Assassin's Creed boring. Assassin's Creed, I've so given up on this franchise. Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I don't know. Are you like a lapsed Assassin's Creed fan? Are you excited about this one? Ever since they moved over to the Dark Souls RPG realms, I've been kind of like, no.
I've tried a few times to get into Assassin's Creed, and there are certainly like I've played a number of them. Right, I've played the first one. I tried to play the first one a couple times. I played some of the more recent ones, like Origin and Odyssey, very briefly. And I feel very similar to Watch Dogs about them, which is like I like understand them as like a very good tactile experience. As like, if you want to play a game, this is a game-ass game. But I tend to not find the stories very enthralling, at least in the ones that I've played. Valhalla looks really pretty. I think it's a really interesting thing to play as marauders, Vikings coming in and burning down Northern Europe. But I probably won't play this one, honestly.
Yeah, I don't know. This one really seems to appeal to the whole, just like, I want to go to a place on the map and then hit a bunch of exclamation points and make those exclamation points go away, and then get like, +2 to big axe. I mean, there's just, I guess the thing is that I used to be really into Assassin's Creed for the story, and I nothing that they've shown of the story of this has interested me even a little bit, where it's like, wow, the Vikings, turns out they're actually sneaky farmers who had to come to England. They had to raid the villages, Bryce. They needed new lands to settle, so they had to come raid the villages. They're really noble, they're very spiritual. It's like when they retconned the orcs in World of Warcraft, and suddenly it's like, oh yeah, you guys are all just super spiritual good guys, and you were being manipulated by the evil rock lords and vampires or whatever. I don't know anything about World of Warcraft, but
it can be an interesting story, right? If you're like, hey, we're going to upend your preconceived notions of the history of Vikings, right? It's not like we're taught a lot about the history of Vikings in school, so at least here in America, and so we tend to build a lot of that off of media, and it's certainly interesting to see, because I do think in general the Assassin's Creed games have been relatively historically accurate, at least in terms of showing a world, setting up a world, and the dynamics of a world. So it's interesting. It's a part of history I certainly don't know a lot about. I still probably.
I don't know. To me, it came off as and I could be totally wrong about this, but it just came off during the presentation as like very cynical, where you're like, it actually turns out that Vikings were very sneaky. So it turns out that they can be assassins, and they can be in our Assassin's Creed game, because there's like 3 pages in some book where they're like, sometimes Vikings were sneaky. I don't know. This franchise has gone
lost the
off
entire thread on a guild of assassins and who is allowed to be an assassin. Like, Assassin's Creed, those words don't mean anything anymore, Jeff. Those were, you couldn't, like, for as much as we want now, like a modern day Assassin's Creed, where it's like, finally, here's what the Assassin's Brotherhood looks like in 20, like, that doesn't mean anything anymore. It's just stories of history and mercenaries, basically.
Actually, did you know that the Assassin's Creed Odyssey and Assassin's Creed Origins both had an Animus framing device of like a character from Abstergo looking through her past, and I'm just like, I can't with this anymore. Like, that part doesn't interest me, and then this part, I mean, nothing that they really showed me in this interests me, but I know there are people that are excited for it. I told the story last week. Somebody on my Discord server was like, the story wasn't very good, but the gameplay for Assassin's Creed Odyssey was very satisfying. And I need the story. I need the story to get me into this like multi-hour, go to the question mark, get the Viking cat, go down the river and raise the countryside gameplay, because just doing this on its own, it's like The Division. I never understood what I was actually doing in the Division 2. Like, who are these bad guys and where did they come from? And it's like, don't worry about that. You're just trying to get purple shotguns. And I'm like, no, I need to know that, or the purple shotguns don't mean anything to me. Like, the loot isn't as important as the story. And this story just has not, I can't get anything out of it. Like, it doesn't connect to me in any way.
I would guess, and this is now speculation, but I'm watching their segment from Ubisoft Forward this week, and they talk a lot about combat, and like, I know I go into Assassin's Creed and I don't think a lot about combat, but if you are someone who likes melee brawlers, like, this seems like it is it for you. Like, I think a lot about how much I enjoyed kind of the repetitiveness of like No Man's Sky, even at launch, right? I liked how meditative it was, because flying around, mining, dealing with like resources and like stock trading and bartering and stuff, like, that's pretty cool. And I think if you have that experience for a brawler, like, I think that's what this is. Like, this is a really pretty brawler. This is a very expensive brawler, and you can't make a brawler that doesn't have some sort of story. And so they've got like this conceit that has let them touch on a lot of civilizations. I think it's just not for us, Jeff. Assassin's Creed, just again, those words don't mean what you think that they mean, or what I think that they mean, right? It has a story because you have to have a story, because you have to have a reason to go around the countryside and having fisticuffs with people, and that's fine. That's great.
I don't know. just the less that the more I see of this franchise, the less interested I am in it. I wasn't really interested in Egypt, and I wasn't really interested in Rome, and I wasn't. It also very much, I don't know. It all, like, because I've gotten further from it, it all looks very samey to me. So they're like, oh, this time there's giant battles. And it's like, well, last time there were giant battles. Yeah, these are just giant Viking battles instead of giant Roman battles. So, and it's like, well, this time there's Norse mythology. And last time there were Roman gods. And you had to do that whole thing. And it was unclear what was going on. They're just, I don't know. I need something more than what they're giving me. And I get that the people that are fans of this franchise, I'm like, more power to you. I always say this. I wish I did like it. I wish I was more interested in this, but I'm just not. So.
I kind of wonder, just as a final thought, like, I wonder how much games like the Assassin's Creed series have eaten up what, part of the gaming ecosystem that, like, licensed character action games would have taken up, right? Like, I look at this and I the a lot of the imagery that they use is similar to, say, like Game of Thrones. And if Game of Thrones was 10, 15 years old, earlier, you would have had licensed Game of Thrones action games. You would have had a bunch of them. And I think now they've just said we could just make the game and not need to have, all these licenses. I don't know that. I don't know that there's an answer to that, but I wonder how much of the air in the room an Assassin's Creed has taken from those licensed action, brawler games.
Yeah. Also, it's worth noting, because this is the end of Ubisoft, it's worth also noting that there was no Beyond Good and Evil 2 for, I believe, the second year in a row at Ubisoft. They did that big presentation, I believe it was 2 years ago, and then we haven't really seen anything from Beyond Good and Evil 2 since then. So, which is one of the only things that I'm interested in addition to Watch Dogs Legion. But I am super, super mega interested in Devolver Digital. I love Devolver Digital. I'm a fan of Devolver Digital. Bryce, because we have webcams that you guys can't see, is grimacing as I say all these things, where I assume that he is not.
Please set this up. I have very specific thoughts about the Devolver Direct 2020.
Okay, tell me about the Devolver Direct 2020, Bryce, because honestly, there's like 4 games in here. We do the actual game stuff in like 30 seconds. This is more about the spectacle surrounding the games.
That's okay. That's the good entry point, because that's the thing that I don't love about this. I think so. This is their 3rd year, if I'm correct, Jeff, of them doing a pre-filmed, streamed, an E3 type announcement. Here we're showing you games and we're having funny bits and I don't know. I look at that first year when they did it, which was, kind of out of nowhere, just like, hey, we're doing this thing, take a look at it, and it's kind of weird, and it's very it has like kind of a lot of ironic humor in it, but it does have like kind of the gross out violent stuff. And then and I look to this year, where, and granted, like, a lot of production, every production on the face of the planet has been affected by COVID. So I'm sure no small amount of that is involved here. But I look at this and I go, like, are we really trying to make a legitimate story out of this? Like, to me, and this is becoming subjective, but I think, like, to me, this is like what I liked was the kind of detached element, the sort of ironic element of it. And I look at this and I just go, oh, okay, so it's like we're just doing the 90s again with ultra-violence and blood and epic meme lasers and, like, fucking have some fucking epic bacon, why don't you? Like, it feels very one note. And, Jeff, one note stretched over 45 fucking minutes is a very tough thing to swallow. I watched this direct today, and at some point I just had to skip through all of this framing device stuff, because it is nothing, right? It's nothing but like a cynical take on video games marketing. And I think even at the end, when the Struthers character is trying to give this, kind of impassioned speech on marketing and how gaming consumers are, I don't know, what their relationship is with marketing, like even that is like, okay, but you're still doing it, right? You're still you're still selling gamers on like your, all this blood and crazy, 80s, right? Like all the RoboCop stuff in here. I think there's putting a lampshade on it. There's putting a hat on it, and then I think there's just being one note, and that's my it's. There are cool ideas here. It would be cool if this was like 20 minutes or something, but for the amount of content here, it just I don't know. Jeff, enlighten me. What is the good thing here?
No, okay. So here's the thing. In some ways, I agree with you because the first Devolver Direct was like 10 minutes or 15 minutes or something like that. It was very short. And I take your criticism. Well, also, I'm not personally offended because I'm not going to sit here and argue on behalf of Devolver Digital. But in the beginning, I feel like they had this character, this Nina Struthers character that just came out and it was like lampooning E3. And then in the second one, because I think there have been 4. And then the second one, they were very much lampooning E3 a second time because that was the one where they had they launched their own crypto. It was a physical loot box that changed price every 5 minutes or something that they literally sold, and they had like this kind of ironic, like, this time we're going into the future, we're making an actual physical arcade machine that you could play with one of our games on it. And then the third year was all about lampooning the Nintendo Directs, and that is where they went. I don't know if this is what they originally had planned or whether they had to, because at the end, there's the end credit sequence where they show all the filming of it, and it's very much like remote cameras. Everybody's got a mask on. It was obviously affected
and they
by
even
COVID.
Call out like, doing Zoom meetings as a part of this. Like that's
right.
In it, for sure.
When you consider that there was that E3's demise was like announced a month or two before E3, and they obviously created the Devolver Land Expo software. Like, that had to be done in advance, right? Like, that was not something that was jigged together in like a week. There's some work put into that. I played it. It's not a lot of work, but it's still work. So I think that what you're seeing here is maybe a combination of not getting to do the thing that they originally wanted to do. Like, you think about the way that this storyline has progressed from Nina's on stage 1, Nina's on stage 2, and then this virtual Nintendo Direct, Nina's on stage 3. And if they had a big, Devolver's, like, they actually have a film studio segment to their organization. If it's possible, they might have had, like, because I think that the teaser at the end of last year was the Come With Me If You Want to Live Terminator, and then they just kind of threw that away in favor of this Zoom meeting. I'm wondering if they had a whole huge thing, but then they couldn't go film for 3 months because of COVID, and they just kind of jinned this together in its place. Because obviously
that's like totally possible and like incredibly valid, right? Like, because my other guess is because all of the other previous ones, just looking through these Devolver conferences, had all been about 20 minutes, where this is almost over twice as long. Like, yeah. I also wouldn't be surprised if this also is meant to replace, all of the other things that you do around E3, which is like spend 8 hours a day streaming and doing developer talks and live demos. Like, there's no space for that either, right? So yeah. I also understand the idea of, well, let's double down on this because we have other things, avenues that we can't do either.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I feel like there's the framing device is take it or leave it. I took it because it also, one of the other things I was thinking when you were talking about it is you did see that. I feel like you did see a lot of times in old shows like from the 90s, Archer comes to, or not Archer wasn't in the 90s, but Archer comes to my Aqua Teen Hunger Force, stuff like that, where it's like you end up collecting enough enough of a universe that then you end up feeling like you have to answer questions that have been asked that were at one point just like a random thing. Like
Right.
Linda Master's character is obviously the psychologist from RoboCop 3. Like this is a character that was in like Frank Miller's RoboCop or in the actual RoboCop 3. Like, and they've now fallen into this continuity well where they feel like they have to resolve this thing instead of just doing what the fuck ever, which is what the last three felt like. The last three felt like, let's just do whatever the fuck we think is funny and go on with it. Whereas this one was like, well, we have to resolve this storyline for some reason. And
the obsession with like, this one line that she says in one of the earlier ones, the futures, like
right.
There's so much of an obsession about that line in this one, and I can't, I don't understand why, other than like, it's probably something you can market and work on, right? Like if you do the Devolver Expo game thing, right, you can have it say the future has been canceled, or the future, like you can work with it. It's clay. But as a narrative piece, if we're talking just about the framing here, as a narrative piece, it's just like, well, that's nothing. You're not bringing new things to this. You're just you're scrapping the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah. Well, let's do the announcements, because that's really the meat of what's here. Because it's funny, as Ubisoft was more professional, I cared less about the things that they announced than I did about the things here. Shadow Warrior 3 got a teaser last week. Bryce, have you ever played the Shadow Warrior franchise?
I haven't. Are they good? I don't know anything about it other than, I guess, as someone who doesn't know anything about Shadow Warrior, the way it is presented makes it sound like, oh yeah, this is like this is like a retro franchise that we are reviving. Yeah,
well, okay. It was originally, Shadow Warrior was the semi-racist spin-off of Duke Nukem 3D made by 3D Realms, where the titular character Lo Wang went around blasting a bunch of very Asian-inspired demons and making one-liners and stuff. Flying Wild Hog rebooted it or made a sequel or whatever, and I don't even know when it was, but it was like 2014 or something like that. And that game is very much like a precursor, in my opinion, to like Doom 2016. It's out of sight, crazy violence. You have a sword, you have magic, you've got a million guns, and there's like all these demons running at you, and you're blowing them up. And Lo Wang is doing one-liners. He's got this demon stuck in his head that he's going back and forth, kind of doing this comedy bits with. It's delightful. And I remember I saw it when I heard about it. I was like, they're rebooting that? Why? And then I got a chance to actually play it at a Devolver booth at either RTX or one of those. And it was like, oh, holy shit, this is a really good game. And then I played all the way through it, and it was like, no, it's a very solid game. And then the second one was kind of more, but it had this randomized environment, Diablo-style loot drop, 600 different guns that can be equipped with different gems that power them up, like branching skill trees and like side missions, which was not quite as good as the first one, but it was still pretty good. And then this third one looks like it's more of the same, like crazy big demons, wry sense of humor, huge explosions, blood everywhere. I'm all the way in. I'm just, I'm all the way in for this franchise. So
yeah, it looks really interesting. I would not be against checking a look.
Yeah, check a look. The Fall Guys finally got a release trailer, which is, plush, family-friendly battle royale where you're not actually murdering people. You're just running up a hill with these little cute guys. I don't remember where that is in this thing, but...
Jeff, I have signed a document that says I cannot talk about Fall Guys. I would love to talk about Fall Guys, and that is all I can say about Fall Guys.
All right, fair enough. Fall Guys seems like it's going to be interesting. I really kind of want to see what it looks like when it actually comes out. Carrion got a full-on release date. I can't wait. Carrion is super fun. There was actually a demo for it on Steam that they put out last year that I think is still up there. reverse horror where you play as this giant like thing like massive tentacles going through.
Because it follows this like tentacle monster in like a sci-fi sort of facility, and it seems like the humans are losing a lot. I didn't. That seems pretty cool.
You didn't clue in that you play as the gigantic monster.
I was skipping through a lot of this at the conference.
Fair enough.
It looks really cool. It's one where the kind of pixel art style fits it really well.
Mm-hmm. It's very cool. It's got a lot of the more humans you consume, the more mass you gain, and then the more mass you gain, the more health you have, and you get little powers and stuff. And that is coming out July 23rd. So as the time this recording goes up, like less than a week. Let's see. And then what else was there? There was let's see. Yeah, Elijah, which came from my dad who works at Nintendo, which is coming to the PC and the Switch. I actually thought this was one of these and it's out today thing. It appears to be a character action game that's kind of a side-scrolling pixel-based action game.
But melee-focused. Like melee spear combat focused.
Yeah, and I feel like it's got that kind of out-of-this-world flashback, like low detail sprites, but with like good action, good movement to them. So it looks very fluid. Yeah, and it appears to be pretty cool. I don't know. There's not a lot more about this. And then I think outside of the Devolver, Serious Sam 4. I keep forgetting about Serious Sam 4.
Are you a Serious Sam fan? Are you a Sam fan?
No, I played the first one, and there's something about when you look at this trailer and you look at the Shadow Warrior trailer, they both involve like blowing up a ton of enemies, but Serious Sam has always seemed to be like the Dynasty Warriors of first-person shooters, where you're blowing up a lot of enemies, but they don't seem very substantial, whereas Shadow Warrior has more of a each individual demon is hard, and you're going to have to kind of know how to beat them. I feel like there's a lot of fodder in Serious Sam, and I don't know.
I now that you say that, I really see that difference between these two trailers, where like the Shadow Warrior one seems like very up close. You're doing a lot of like close damage. You've got the sword in some instances. And you're not dealing with a lot of armies. At least what they show here is like dealing with like bosses and traversal stuff, where Serious Sam is you're shooting a lot of guys.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then the last thing that was kind of one of their big finales is the Devolver Land Expo, which was a free game that basically simulates breaking into the LA Convention Center to go to a Devolver Digital themed E3 that is happening, and you're like getting chased around by security drones, and at the end there's a big like kind of amalgamated robot boss that you have to fight with a power glove. The whole thing takes about 45 minutes, and there's some secrets in there, but I didn't find all of them. Again, I mean, this is very cynical, but if video games want to hype themselves up by giving me free video games, then I'm all in favor of playing dumb free video games about playing free video games. So, and I forgot about Weird West is also in there, but Weird West is... I'm interested in Weird West. They haven't shown a lot of it yet. Or sorry, that might not have been in the conference. That might have been in the Devolver Land Expo.
Yeah, that was in the... But this looks like a Diablo-y kind of cowboy game.
Yeah, but it's got like Cthulhu's and vampires and werewolves and stuff in it, so it's Weird West as opposed to just like kind of a standard Western. But that was it, except I don't know. I feel like you probably might have turned this off when I got to the end credits, but the end credit theme of the Devolver Direct 2020 may very well have been the best part. It was a rocking like 80s anthem about the Devolver Direct by Stemage, who is a guy who is a musician who makes video game music and does covers of video game themes. And he kind of just made this very like 80s kind of cheese butt rock song about how like Nina, you could do it, and like it was great. I loved it. I don't know. I've also have fallen prey to the dumb thing where they show you stuff that you like, and you're like, I like it all. I don't care how bad it is. I like all of it. So.
Cool. Yeah, I did hear a little bit of that at the end. I heard him saying the future and all that stuff. It was fun. Yeah.
I think Check a Look is way better than the future.
Check a Look is so good. Say Check a Look more.
All right, and with that, we're going to go ahead and take a break. But when we come back, there's actually more news. Oh my God, we're not even done yet. But we got to do it. We'll be back. Hold on, we'll be back. Disclosure, it's been 24 hours since part one. I always like to say that just in case somebody is like, why is Jeff's voice so raspy in part two? It's because last night I had 6 beers and 1 million cigarettes, and that's why my voice is so raspy. But we're back.
It's living the dream. That being an adult is having 1 million cigarettes.
Yes. And so we had a whole week worth of news to do in the second part because the first part was pretty much just those conferences, kind of like last time. But I figured some of this stuff is important. Some of it's just kind of like you can just, I don't know, just say it out loud and then people know there's not really a hot take on like what's coming to Game Pass in July. You know, that's not really a big thing. But both you and I spent an inordinate amount of time last night playing Ghost of Tsushima. And also, it appears we spent an inordinate amount of time this afternoon before we started playing Ghost of Tsushima. So, what are your thoughts about Ghost of Tsushima, Bryce? Early hot takes.
Early hot takes. I'm about 4 or 5 hours in, maybe. I'm enjoying it. I thought that the things that I'm bumping into are some of the camera stuff. I think the camera can be a little awkward. It can be a little too close, and I don't think it does a good job of tracking enemies. Mm-hmm. And wanting to play the combat faster. Like the right way is to play it smarter and slower and guard and parries and all that stuff. And I kind of want to hack and slash into it. So I think those things are frustrating me. But I was also live streaming a lot of me playing that, so I think that is what got me really impatient. Playing it today, kind of with off camera, it was really nice, and I think I'm starting to figure out all of the little side things because there's a lot of little side things, and you could easily wander into a lot of them without the game ever telling you, like, oh, hey, you should go and follow the foxes. You should go follow birds. You know, that's kind of my initial take on the gameplay stuff. What about you, Jeff?
I like it. Matt and I recorded a bunch of episodes for it that are coming out on Monday and Tuesday. I definitely keep clicking the R3 stick because that's the lock-on button in Dark Souls. And because the combat it's not really Dark Souls because it doesn't have the whole stamina management thing, but it does. You can get killed really fast if you're not paying attention. And it's been interesting to kind of catch up with the rhythm of that because I feel like a lot of games recently have either hewed really closely to the Dark Souls formula or they have hewed more closely to like the Devil May Cry formula, which I feel is a little bit more like technical hacky. And then the Dark Souls formula is a little bit more kind of like waiting and pushing. It's actually funny. The thing that I can think of that reminds me the most of this game is an old PS2 franchise called Way of the Samurai. Have you ever played Way of the Samurai?
I don't. No, I didn't.
It was this really crazy old game where like there was like 5 areas and a bunch of NPCs, and you would come into this world, and it was literally that story where the 2 houses are fighting, and you as a Ronin walk in, and you can join one, you can join the other. But the thing about that game was that it was made to be played over and over and over again because you could join one and then win the game for that house, or you could join that one and then make a secret deal to screw them over with the second house, or you could do neither, or you could just kill everybody that you saw, or you could get killed by the first guy on the map. So it's kind of like an iterative roguelike, and the combat in this reminds me more of like that, or even something like Bushido Blade a little bit back on the original PlayStation. Like it feels very different than any game that I've played recently. It's like quiet. and kind of empty and calm and very atmospheric, and I've enjoyed that. There are some definite technical weird things. Like you can't skip over a line of dialogue. You can either skip the entirety of dialogue, or you have to just watch it. And at first, that was really bothering me because I'm just like, I gotta play this game. I gotta play this game super fast. But as time has gone on, I've kind of settled into that world, and it's just much more like, I'm going to this mission, but I'm probably going to get sidetracked by about 8 different things on the way to that mission, and that's fine. Like, I don't need to be worried about getting directly to the next thing.
Yeah, it definitely feels like there's a lot going on, especially in like a relatively small open world, I would say. And it is fun to go off and do these side quests and find the fox shrines and get flowers and materials and stuff. I'm still kind of wrestling with what is and isn't important, and what the different, I don't know, tiers of missions are. Like, there are like blue side quests, and then there are the white normal side quests, and then the gold ones are like Jin's story, the main character's story. So those are, I would assume, main story beats, but the stuff that they set up in those gold missions turns into the white missions, like the tales with like Ishikawa, the archer sensei. And so I'm still trying to get a full grasp on like, what is the structure of this game, right? It feels very open and free form, and I have, it's easy to play, it's easy to move and be in flux, but when I try to wrestle with what I should be doing and what is important, or what are side jags, I'm still trying to get my hands on that. Do you have a better sense of that?
I hate to sound like a super new age hippie, but Bryce, you gotta let all that go. You just gotta do what you feel is right. Actually, that's not true. When you start the game, you immediately need to do the first 2 gold quests, because there's a gold quest that teaches you how to like listen for enemies and kill and assassinate, really important, and then the other one gives you your bow, and that one's also really important. Like, from there. Right. I have just... And
they will let you not do both of those first.
Yes.
Right? Like, because I did the assassination one first, because I think that's like the first one that pops up. And then they're like, here, you're welcome to the island. And I spent a lot of time not having a bow. And that was like super weird.
Yep. It's... Outside of that, I think that the thing that has made it a lot more open-ended for me is that I don't think that the game would want you to mainline the story quest if it didn't put like the next segment of the story quest so far away from anything that you've found, and then make you encounter like 800 things on the way there. There's going to be patrols. There's going to be like, hey, here's this guy.
Settlements.
Do you want to...
And not being sure if you're like missing something, right? Like going on the way and like, oh, here's a fortress that says it's Mongol captured or Mongol controlled. I guess I should try to liberate it, and getting like run over constantly by these forces, because I'm still in the midst of learning this game, and I'm surprised that they let go of your hand so early in that way.
I think it's weird, because the other thing I think that I noticed in this game is that every upgrade that I've gotten so far has been very significant early on. So like, one of the first things that, they'll give you get 1 upgrade point the first time you're able to upgrade. And there's so many things that you could go towards getting an upgrade point into. And I feel like all of them are very consequential. So like, in the combat, you've got the perfect parry that sets you up for like this really devastating counterattack, or you can get the kind of Witcher style, because you've got a sidestep, but you get the Witcher style like roll away from combat to kind of disengage. And like, both of those have massive they massively change the way that you're able to deal with stuff. But then like the next tier down, in the ghost tier, you'll have things like When you aim your bow, you can click in the R3 stick to slow down time, which again is massively consequential because when you've got a whole group of enemies, at first it was like, oh, I'm just going to have to sit here and block. But now it's like, I can use that roll to get far enough away, aim my bow at the archer that's been peppering me, slow down time so I don't get hit while I'm aiming, take out that guy, and then turn back around and deal with the guys that are coming up to me. So I think that what I really like about this game is it feels to me a lot like an old Assassin's Creed game where like the upgrade powers that you get are very consequential as opposed to being like, this is plus 5% damage to heavy enemies. It's like there are 4 stances in the game, and each one of those stances is specifically a key for the lock of a different enemy type. So the initial stance works for swordsmen, which you find more often, but then you get a second stance that is made for guys with shields. And if you switch to that stance and then start hitting the triangle button to break the guards on the shield guys, their guards break almost instantaneously compared to if you're trying to use the sword stance to make them vulnerable. And so it feels like here in the early game, I don't know how it goes as you go later on, but if they can keep at this pace, it's just like every single thing I've gotten has been consequential because it drastically changes. It gives me a whole new verb to make combat easier, to where in the beginning I was struggling with 4 guys, and I just got done clearing out an entire Mongol base where like I would assassinate a few guys, I would kill a few guys. I got the smoke bomb that lets me like disengage from combat and then set up another stealth encounter that then leads to a combat encounter that then goes to a sub-objective. So I feel like it's very much a game that has a curve, like a power curve. And then in the beginning, you really feel, I could see how anybody that played the game in the beginning would be like, oh, I hate this. Like, I'm just getting killed all the time. But then there's also not really any real consequence for death because there's not experience. Well, there's experience, but it doesn't go away. You don't really lose money or resources. So it's kind of like you're just set back a few.
And they do a good job of checkpointing you in some of the larger battles, right? Last night, one of the last things I did on the stream was the Forge, liberating the Forge, and that is like a large kind of it culminates in this large multi-wave battle, basically. And I died kind of in a later wave, and you get respawned, and it seemed like it was right back at that point in the battle. So between that. Really, like you mentioned earlier, like there's no stamina bar, there's no dash, bar, there's no, your horse can just gallop the whole time. Like, it's a refreshing amount of mobility, right? I think maybe that is intentional to kind of, put distance between a game like this and maybe Sekiro, which I haven't played. I've only seen footage of, or a Dark Souls game, right? To make it feel a little more accessible and not have, proprietary limitations, right? Just because. Yeah, I feel like when you say that, what it reminds me of is that I feel like there's a lot of things in this game that make it easy to play. It is an easy to play game. There's not a lot of friction between the game and me. Like there's a climbing mechanic, but instead of making you do the Uncharted thing where you've got to keep tapping like the jump button, you just press the left stick in the direction of where the next ledge is, and you just go there. If you the other thing that's, I have a story in here, so I guess this maybe leads into some of the stuff we could talk about, but the load times are phenomenal. Like, they're so short. So insane. Going to a place to do it, like if you get the one ingot that you needed to upgrade and you've cleared out a location, every place is a fast travel point, so you could just go to the town, do an upgrade, go right back to where you were, and the whole process takes 10 seconds. So, or I mean, like 30 seconds to a minute, depending on if you know where you're going and how fast you get there. Yeah. And respawning after a death is even faster. Like, they have, I guess we'll talk about it in that news story, but like, they have tooltips on there, and they are not joking when they say, like, yeah, we made the load times as long as they are, so you could kind of read a tooltip. Because I would on stream, I was just like, I would read it out loud, and I could only get halfway through it because it would turn around so fast. That's crazy to me. It's kind of insane that we're at this point and the load times are so good.
It's kind of strange. It's almost like the entire world has been inverted, because if there was a game where I actually needed to read the tooltips that has been very just like, do whatever, we are not going to JRPG tutorialize the first anything of this game. Like, you get, the combat tutorial and a stealth tutorial, and they're all very short, and then it's just like, you do whatever you feel like doing. There's some really complicated like platforming segments to get to these shrines, and the game just, it puts up a prompt that says hit this button to go down a cliff, and then if you walk up to the side of a cliff and hit the jump button, you go. I don't even think they ever tell you there's a jump button. You just got to figure that shit out on your own. And personally, I really appreciate it, because I have grown very tired of games pretending like I've never played a video game before for the first 90 minutes, and being like, okay, I'm going to teach you how to aim and shoot a gun in a first-person shooter now. And it's like, I don't need that. So I like that.
I do wish it set a better... and granted, I was live streaming the first few hours that I was playing this, so it could be that I was distracted or asterisk on all of this. But like, I do wish it gave you a better sense of how you should play the game and how you should handle combat, and the fact that you should handle combat slower, instead of trying to hack and slash your way through it, because that was something that I really, really bumped up against, and maybe it's just you need to have that friction to self-learn, and I don't know, but I think it's really it's nice that it doesn't hold your hand too much.
Yeah, I think there's a definite curve in the beginning, that you start out disempowered and with no real idea of how to play the game. But then I think that the other side of that is that it gives you a really dramatic sense of progression over the first hour or two, as you start putting points into techniques and meeting people and getting the ability to do a stealth kill, the ability to use the bow and arrow, that those sorts of things really give you a sense of fast progression, that almost like like in Metroid, when you get the ball at the very beginning, where it's like you have nothing. You've got like jump and shoot, and then suddenly you get this thing. And I kind of like it when a game hands you a lot of stuff. And then I also really like the way that the game does the cosmetics. I don't know how much, if you've gotten any other armor, but like the one thing that I do wish there was, they have hotkeys to switch everything. I kind of wish there was a hotkey to switch armor, because it seems like all you have to do is go into the pause button to switch to different armor. And so far I have the Traveler suit, which is really good for traveling, and then the Ronin suit, which is very kind of stealth and damage focused, and then an armor suit that is defensive focused. So whenever there's like a big group of enemies, I'll switch between them as needed. And in some ways I wish I could hot switch those, just because it's a little bit.
Do they let you do it while you're in an encounter?
Yeah. I mean, if you can hit the pause button, then you can change it. It's just you have to go into that menu, go into the sub menu, and then switch to the different thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
I dig it. The other thing I'm interested in figuring out is, because I was doing this on the live stream and I wanted to get a sense. That's kind of why I was grappling with what are the important stories or missions in this, because if I would like to play it more on the live stream, and I'd like to focus that on the important stuff, and I don't get a sense of how important any element of the mission and any of the missions are to a story, right? Like, you need to be introduced to characters so you know who they are. But then, like, I'm doing a bunch of the Ishikawa missions to find his mentor, Tomoe, who has gone off and joined the Mongols. Like, is that important? Is that going to be important? I don't know. I really don't. Like, I know Ishikawa's important. I know I need people to help save my uncle, but so there's a little bit. That's kind of a personal thing on why I want to know that stuff. But otherwise, like, I think it's really, really interesting and like a really deep story. It doesn't feel, I don't know, wonky, right? It doesn't feel off.
To me, I go back to the fact that it feels very sedate and kind of contemplative almost. That there's like a lot of kind of quiet time, and when you're fighting, I mean, the last game. Well, I mean, I guess the last third-person action game that I played was The Last of Us 2. There's not really any comparison there. I don't feel bad playing this game. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would say that from what I've experienced so far, it seems like all the gold missions are the main story missions, and everything else could be kind of forgotten about.
Ancillary.
Yeah. But that the other missions would make those missions way easier because you're going to end up with more power, more armor, more technique points to add into more things to make you more flexible to be able to complete those missions later on. So, but let's get back to the news, because there was news this week, a bunch more news, and we're probably going to have to run through a lot of this. We did get some more information about some of the stuff from Ubisoft's show. There was an interview where they talked about that the minor quests are not going to be like traditional throwaway side quests in this game.
In Assassin's Creed.
In Assassin's Creed Valhalla, yes. So, which I think would be a good thing. One of the things that has irked me about Assassin's Creed, not to just stay on that forever, is that a lot of the side quests didn't feel very consequential, but I'm still... Somebody actually sent in a question to the show about, like, what makes for a good side quest? Like, is there such a thing as a good side quest? If we know that it's not important to the main narrative, what is it that makes something, like, in a video game a good side quest? And I've been kind of thinking about that. I don't know that I've come to any, like, dramatic conclusions, because there can be fun side quests, but so I really need to sit down and think about, like, if you took the side quests out of every open world game that there was, which ones would suffer and which ones wouldn't. Because, like, Jason and I, when we were playing Red Dead Redemption 2, we stuck to the main story path slavishly, and it was like, it's still a very long, very intricate story, and I don't think that doing, like, the circus mission really adds a lot to the main storyline of Arthur Morgan and Red Dead Redemption 2. So I don't know if there was less chaff in this Assassin's Creed Valhalla as opposed to the previous ones, that might actually draw me in more, because it would feel more consequential and less like just making the exclamation points on the map disappear. So,
and I think they give a good justification for this, right? The idea, like, well, you are an invading force. The people there are not going to want your help for anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's smart, right? Rather than trying to pepper in the map full of towers and fetch quests and stuff. Like, that makes sense, and I'd be interested to see what that does for the balance of a game like that, because you look at an Assassin's Creed game and so much of it is on not just the main story quest, but all of these other things that you can do, and these characters and the world building you do with the side quests. And I don't know, when you have less of that might be better, given how heavy that is in Assassin's Creed.
Yeah. Yep. And then we also, speaking of Assassin's Creed, we learned that one of the people that you could recruit in Watch Dogs Legion is the descendant of Jacob Fry from Assassin's Creed Syndicate. One of the... I actually thought Assassin's Creed Syndicate was fine, but I feel like everybody kind of hates Assassin's Creed Syndicate. This isn't a whole lot. This kind of reminds me of wasn't there a thing in Grand Theft Auto 5 Online where one of your parents could be John Marsden, or one of your grandparents could be John Marsden?
Yeah, when you're doing the created character, because it's all like, pick your parents and we'll make a character.
Right.
Yeah, it was weird, because, like, I think he was like the only special, or at least when it launched, he was like the only specialty character.
Mm-hmm.
As an option, and then it would just be like random NPCs. Does this do anything for you, Jeff? Because, I mean, this is just flavor text almost, to my eyes.
Yeah, it's an Easter egg. I mean, it'd be the sort of thing where you find this person, you're just like, oh, that's fine. But I mean, you're kind of assuming that somebody is a big enough fan of Assassin's Creed Syndicate. All those huge Assassin's Creed Syndicate fans are going to be like, oh shit, I wasn't going to get this game, but now it turns out that you could play as one of the Fry kids. Oh my god, they're the Fry kids. So yeah, I don't know, it's fine. It's mostly just kind of a fun little Easter egg. And then we also, I think that's it for Ubisoft, because the other thing is, It's Call of Duty. It seems like it's kind of late in the year to still kind of be wondering about what this year's Call of Duty will be, since it will be coming out in October, November. Back in a few months back, there was a weird listing that showed up on the PlayStation Store for what was assumed to be the internal alpha for whatever the next Call of Duty was going to be. But now there is a store page on the Microsoft Store called The Red Door. And I don't know if I had it in this story, but it had like a weird keyhole. It looked like a Control DLC or like a sequel to Dr. Sleep. It's this red keyhole with like this maze thing, and then the description of it says, there is more than one truth. If you go looking for answers, be ready to question everything and accept that nothing will ever be the same. The red door awaits. Do you dare step through it? And it's apparently an Activision game, and with the PlayStation Connection, people are thinking that this is like just a placeholder for the next Call of Duty, which all the scuttlebutt has been is going to be Vietnam, but this is so weird. It's like they've done production for the placeholder text for their next game.
Yeah, it's not a placeholder logo. This keyhole and maze imagery that they've got is like, you don't just sketch this out. I would not think that you would just throw this. You would put this much work into a placeholder. We know that there's going to be a new Call of Duty coming out in a couple months, Jeff? Well, or is that just usually when they come out?
They've never missed a year so far. So that's the rationale is that there's been scuttlebutt this year that there's going to be a new Call of Duty that's going to be a Black Ops reboot with Vietnam component. The fact that this is an Activision game and that it's 80 gigs listing on the store is about the size of their stuff. And then so there's just a lot of, this seems to be the next Call of Duty, but it's just so strange. Like what even is, again, the little picture for it makes it look like the next DLC for Control, not the next Call of Duty game. So I don't know. Let's see. We got some Xbox news. Xbox Game Pass, Xbox Game Pass Ultimate is going to be adding Project xCloud streaming soon in September. So if you have Game Pass Ultimate, which is the $15 a month one that does PC and the Xbox One, you will also be getting access to Microsoft's xCloud thing, which is their streaming to phones and other devices from your system. Or from the cloud. I think it's from the cloud.
So that's what I was confused about, because I know that they had an in-home streaming thing for Xbox, and I wasn't sure if this was streaming from the cloud like Stadia does, or on your device in your home going out to wherever your other device receiving the video feed is.
I'm pretty sure that this is in the cloud. That this is just like it connects to your account, and then you're able to stream whatever games are available on Game Pass in the cloud to smart devices wherever you are. Or at least that's what the copy for it reads. They also last week announced a controller that was being made by 8-Bit Dio, who makes a lot of like retro Bluetooth controllers, that was made specifically it's like the size of a Super Nintendo controller that would attach to a bracket that you could put a phone on, that would be for the streaming that they're going to be doing. But this is interesting because this comes right on the heels of Stadia announcing some new stuff there too. But if you can get everything that's on Game Pass and a streaming service, and it's run by Microsoft, I don't know. There's been a lot of kind of like, is this the end for Stadia? And I don't think the answer is yes, but I don't think this is a good thing for Stadia.
This is so interesting with the way Project xCloud is unfolding and how it's being folded into Xbox Live Ultimate, because there's also talk about the new, Lockhart Xbox device, which would be a new Xbox console but lower powered to rely on Game Pass and game streaming. It makes me wonder really what the landscape for an Xbox consumer looks like in the next 6 to 12 months, right? Like, if you tell me, like, okay, hey, all the Microsoft exclusives are going on Game Pass, and we're going to continue to do that, and now Game Pass includes PC, and Microsoft is going to at least continue to say they care about it. If I wanted to play Halo Infinite, would I even need to buy an Xbox Series X? Could I just get Game Pass and get it on my phone? Like, I want to know what that looks like, because that's a like direct at Stadia I don't know, competition, and really can, I don't know, buck the paradigm of generational gaming hardware. You know, we've seen Sony say a lot, like, we care about generations, and not talking a lot about the transition for this next generation, where Microsoft has been very open. Like, we're going to have smart delivery do cross-gen. We're going to have singular SKUs. You're going to the games you own, you're going to be able to buy. The games you already own, we have a ton of backwards compatibility. And I think a really winning move for Xbox is like, look, man, you don't even need the box if you don't want it. Like, Stadia, we're already doing it. Just give us $15 a month, and you get Game Pass, so you get Halo on day one anyway. Like, I think that's at least that's really consumer friendly. The ubiquity that we see, like, in Windows across, like, in terms of compatibility, come to the gaming space. And I'm a Sony fan myself, and I think every day Sony doesn't talk about that stuff is really worrying. It makes me sweat, because I'm not buying Grand Theft Auto 5 a fourth time, Jeff. I'm not doing it. No.
Well, it's funny. I think that Microsoft has, in this console generation, have gone from, like, Sony is very much stuck in the Sony and Microsoft, or Sony and Nintendo are playing the old school. You buy the console, you get the games on the console, you buy the console to play the games on the console. Microsoft has cast this net super wide. I mean, unless I'm mistaken, every Microsoft exclusive is also available on PC. So you don't need to even have an Xbox One now. Like, you can install those things through Game Pass on the PC. You can play Gears of War, you can play Sea of Thieves, you can play Forza on a PC as long as you have the system requirements for it. And now it's like, you've got the backwards compatibility, you've got Game Pass. It seems like they just want this super wide thing where they're like, we are going to offer you, like, getting into the Microsoft architecture is going to give you a shitload of games on whatever device you want. You don't even have to buy the new console. They're all going to be playable on your Xbox One S diskless that you still have. You can still play Halo Infinite on that, or your phone, or your PC, or whatever you have. Almost like they're trying to run a service with the name Xbox, and Sony is trying to sell you a console with the name PlayStation. That's more the idea that I get out of it. You look at where Xbox vis-a-vis PC gaming is right now, and it is nicer than it has been, say, 10 years ago. Right? You like, Microsoft has said, like, we now have studios that are making video games for us, and we are going to be doing that stuff on PC as well. We're going to be bringing that stuff to Game Pass. But you look at, I am still very hesitant about Microsoft's handling of PC gaming. I think in years past, God, I wish I knew where the article was, but Microsoft has a long history of talking about their dedication to PC gaming for decades, and it doesn't always gel with what their goals are for Xbox. And you look at Game Pass. Game Pass on PC is a good idea and is a good value, but it's not the same games that are on Xbox or Game Pass on Xbox. They're not the same games. Using the Microsoft Store is still a clusterfuck. It is really confusing. Like, they have UI and UX things to solve on that, and that's really key. Like, that's really vital. Just because you're the only one there doesn't mean you are given carte blanche to have this really ridiculous app store like this. This is something where they have to prove themselves through their actions, and the past couple of years have been fine, but they need what they've done after they say PC gaming is its focus. I'm really curious to know what the next 2 years looks like for Xbox, because if they can leverage those studios that they've bought into a bunch of Xbox exclusive titles. That's been the main drawback, is that yes, you can play Xbox games anywhere, but if you're not interested in Sea of Thieves, like there's no God of War outside of Gears of War. Like there's no Spider-Man. Like there've been a lot of high profile I don't think that the Xbox exclusives have been as high profile as the things that have been on the PlayStation. And that's very much a judgment call. Like I'm not into Gears or Forza as much, but that's a racing game, you know, a third person shooter. Whereas I feel like
subjective, or I think objectively you can say they certainly don't have as many franchises as PlayStation does. They don't have as many at-bats because they've never had as many development studios, right? They've relied on marketing deals and brand, you know, exclusivity deals, but at the end of the day, those deals run out. Those and those games move other places, even years down the line. However you want to call it, it's still not the same thing as owning these games.
Yeah,
and now that they own, you know, 15 new game studios over the past 18 months, that now they can have, and then once those existing games start getting pushed out of the pipeline and they start working on new stuff exclusive for Microsoft, we'll see what that looks like. But that requires a lot of business people sticking to the thing that they're saying now for the next 2 or 3 years.
Yep, I could see that. Let's see. Let's run through the rest of these Xbox. Xbox One X and Xbox One S discless are both ceasing production in the run up to the. Is that wrong? Do you make
No, you're
face?
right. Which is which? Is the S the base and the X is the Pro?
The X is the Pro, yes, and the S is the base, and then there's the S discless version that they also sell.
It's a good thing that their new one is also called the X.
If there's one thing that Microsoft needs to do, it's they need to rename this whole fucking product line, because you've got the Xbox 360, the Xbox One, the Xbox One X, the Xbox One S, and the Xbox Series X, and potentially with Lockhart another thing as well. And it's just like, it's even the Wii and the Wii U.
Scorpio was a cool name. Yes. Scorpio was a cool name. They should have kept that. At least I know what a Pro thing is. Okay, anyway.
They need to get over this shit and just make them 1, 2, 3, 4. I know the PlayStation's one ahead of you, but you know, come on.
This makes sense in terms of like, hey, we're going to have a lower powered device that will eventually replace the Xbox One on the hardware side. And when you say like we're going to have all this compatibility anyway, then that just makes sense. Like, cool, we're going into a new thing, and Xbox One is now exiting the stage at its own time, and now it's Xbox Series,
yeah,
whatever.
And there's going to be enough stock from now until the holidays anyway with the stuff that's been built up. Speaking of more Xbox news, my transitions are all off today. I'm sorry, guys. Series X. So we know that there's going to be the Xbox Showcase next week on July 23rd, but we did get a report saying that there is not going to be probably no hardware price or release date. Hardware wise, basically this is going to be focused on games and nothing else. So don't get your hopes up and then go into YouTube chat and be like, price and release date, everybody press F for price and release date. God, YouTube live chat is a toxic stew and I hate it.
You saw the last Xbox Showcase, right, with all the third party games? What did you think about that? Because it was cool to see a lot of new games announced and what seems like cross-generation or smart delivery games. But I was really upset that there was not as much what would seem like gameplay footage. It didn't seem like there was much at all. And that's always very tough. This is E3 time. There's always a lot of bull shots going around. And I want to see what these games look like when you play them.
When I watched it, I first kind of cut Valkyrie. Everybody got real mad about Valkyrie. I thought that the other stuff that they showed, a lot of it looked really good, and a lot of it looked really good in that, in the way that it was new stuff. It wasn't sequels, right? It was new IPs. It was kind of interesting things. They were indie. None of them were like, you know, super high res, like here's the game changing thing that you've never seen anything that looks like this before. But what I took away from that first one was when I looked at the general quality of graphics and particles, textures, lighting maps, normal maps, of what I could see the generational shift Like I don't think that I keep trying to tell people that I think that we need to keep our expectations managed, because it's not going to be the same shift from the PlayStation 3 to the PlayStation 4 as it's going to be for the PS4 to the PS5, graphically speaking. Like, we're already 4K, full HDR, once you've got everything turned up on an Xbox One X or a PS4 Pro, looks really good. And even when you compare it to super high resolution PC Steam games, like the really good stuff, there's definitely a difference, but it's not so much of a difference. I think that what we're going to be looking at in this generation is going to be better lighting, better particles, better physics engines, and like smoke and texture. And then I also think that I don't think anybody realizes what the loading time thing is going to do yet. And I think it's going to take a few years to get into what the loading time thing can do yet, because there is a lot of established game development that's based on hiding load times, loading things into a place where they can get access to them if you need them, loading environments, how big an environment can be, how detailed an environment can be. Whereas if this streaming tech that the PS5 is really going after, but the Xbox Series X also has access to, if this starts to be more of a thing, if the new, let's put it this way, if the new benchmark for how good your system can play games is not your video card, but how fast your hard drive is, I think that opens up a really interesting new set of development that can be done, because you don't have to worry about some of this old school cheating that you had to do that's very established. You could do weird things like that Ratchet and Clank game. They came out and said that the going through the portals into the different areas, that was the hard drive on the PS5 hot loading those areas in. That wasn't a trick. That was like part of them doing that was using the tech on that PS5 hard drive to essentially go from an area that you were in to a new area in just like no time at all, just like slam bam super fast. So
I wonder where, like, we're gonna look at first party games, especially say Sony stuff, where they're only really making stuff for the PlayStation, and you're gonna see them really take advantage of it. But I wonder what third party developers are gonna do, if only because I would look, if I'm at the design phase of a game and I'm saying like, well, we have this PC market, and the PC market has not evolved to having solid state drives as a standard. I wonder what that looks like for third-party developers. I wonder how much PC gaming is the lowest common denominator in that regard. Instead of being like the avant-garde and the front of the line as being the lowest common denominator, and saying, well, we still need to design this game so that if it's playing on a hard drive on a computer, you can also get that. Because maybe we'll see it in the next year or so, but I don't want to be the first developer to say you actually need to install this game on a solid state drive. I don't want to be the person who says that. Someone will, and maybe that'll be the tipping point, but I don't want to be that person.
I think that you're going to end up with what we saw last time, with like the kind of cross-generational stuff, where you're going to have a version of a game where it's like they do program in ways for it to work with a slower hard drive with more caching and stuff, but then there's going to be a set of features or maybe just they'll have to start it by being like, here are some things that only work if you have a solid state drive. Because if there's one thing that you could say about the PC gaming market, it's that the PC gaming market is apparently not afraid to spend a lot of money on upgrading to a new hardware set. Like, I'm actually more interested to know what this does to my Switch because the Switch has nothing that could stand up to this. Like,
it's low power, but it is all solid state, between cartridges and running off of ARM, basically, and a Tegra. I mean, it's lower powered, but I mean, we've seen like The Witcher's on that thing. Like when a Switch 2 comes out or something, and it's more powerful and it's got a new Tegra or something in it, like I think you can still have a lot of power in that. But on the other side of that coin, we also have seen Nintendo not care too much about missing out on third-party games, right? The biggest game in the world, Grand Theft Auto 5, is not on the Switch,
right?
And no one is crying tears about it.
And a lot of the games that have been on the Switch, it's kind of just been accepted that they're not going to look as good. Mortal Kombat is not going to look as good on the Switch as it is on the other systems. The Witcher is not going to look as good on the Switch. Dark Souls isn't going to look as good on the Switch. So, but anyway, speaking of video games, we did get the listing of Game Pass stuff coming to Game Pass in July. There's some really good stuff in here. I was really and of course this is the back half of July. I was really excited to see that Carrion is going to be on there because I really liked Carrion. Grounded.
That's day and date with its release, isn't it?
Yes.
July 23rd?
Yes.
Okay.
Grounded is going to be released there, which is amazing. That's the Obsidian game that's Honey, I Shrunk the Kids meets Minecraft, where you're the tiny little kid in like a big yard and you're fighting like ants and spiders and aphids and you're trying to make little grass spears. It's on the Xbox. It's an Xbox exclusive, which might be why Bryce has never heard of it.
I'm looking it up now. This looks really cute. This is like very, very Fortnite looking, like with the very colorful sort of palette. This is clever. I like this idea. Wow.
Mm-hmm. It's really great. Matt and I played it, and it was funny because like we got really scared because we found some ants, and we found one ant, and then like a bunch of other ants ran up on us, and I was like, oh shit, what are we gonna do? And he's like, don't attack him. And then all the ants just kind of looked at us, and then like half of them just walked away, and the other half just followed us around because they weren't hostile. They just wanted to know what we were up to, and so we just had this kind of little group of ants following us around. Then we tried to go into their nest, and the warrior ants totally rocked them and socked them. But it's also a weird mystery game because you don't know why you're shrunk, and there's like all this weird technology that there's a weird story to figure out about why are you small, and also there are spiders that are the size of houses that will try to eat you. It's horrible, and I love it.
Wow.
So. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
And also Yakuza Kiwami on July 30th. Everybody should play Yakuza. Kiwami 2. Yes, Kiwami 2. Everybody should play Yakuza all the time, all of them from start to finish, as well as all of the sequels and the spin-offs. You will thank me later. All right, I also have a bunch of Sony stuff here. Apparently, I'm super happy about this. Sony is going to close to double the expected PS5 production for this year. They were initially going to do a run of 5 to 6 million, and according to internal reports, they're going to be bumping that up to 10 million, which is great because I get the feeling that the new consoles are going to sell. They're going to sell it super fast, and then because of COVID, we're going to be seeing a bit of a lull in getting the hardware back, basically getting a refresh of stock, kind of like when the initial Switch first came out.
Mm-hmm. I'm 10 million is a good number, and a console can sit on shelves for more than a holiday season. I wonder if that's only because with the 5 to 6 million number was a post-COVID estimate, right? Especially given how much production was impacted near the beginning of the COVID outbreak versus where they expect it will be over the next 6 months. But that's a good sign, right? Like it's a good problem to have when a lot of people want your console and you run out of them. Mm-hmm. But a better problem to have is meeting all of that demand immediately.
Yes, shut up and take my money, Sony. There's also some interesting, there was a recently filed patent that Sony put in that looks like there might be doing some cloud-based backwards compatibility stuff for systems as far back as the original PlayStation. In their little, the little thing that they have laid out, they have what looks like to be a PS1, a PS2, a PS3, all kind of like going forward to this cloud-based system. So it's an interesting question. I feel like Sony has not been really super interested in backwards compatibility. I feel like, PlayStation Now is okay, and now with the ability to download PS4 titles, it's kind of worth it a little bit. Like, I have a friend who has PS Now, and whenever he's bored, he just looks for whatever the newest PS4 game is that's on there and just downloads it. But it would be nice to be able to go back, because I actually just spent, I don't know, like $70 trying to get a PlayStation 2 hooked up to a TV. I bought a few different adapters and a few different cables to try to output a PS2 to HDMI, and there's like all these janky third-party solutions. The controllers are all kind of messed up at this point, so it would be nice,
old and gunky,
yeah, to be able to go back if we could do that.
This will be interesting, right? But patents, there are a lot of patents, and a lot of patented technology never sees the light of day. So I don't know. I would always prefer on-device emulation, and you would think that these fucking things are strong enough to let me play like an Omega Boost from the PlayStation 1, but who knows? You know,
it's so weird because I've been following the PS2 emulation because I want to start doing more PS2 games on Rage Select, and what you find out is that it doesn't matter. Like the engine is so alien to what PC hardware is that, like, if you try to emulate it, there's so many little pieces of hardware. You're not just building a virtual engine, right? You're building the different pipelines that are inside of that hardware. So like Burnout 3 Takedown runs great on my PC through emulation, except that it won't load the sky texture. And that's like been a known issue for 4 years. So you can race under a completely black sky texture in Burnout 3 Takedown. I can even render it 4K and it looks amazing. But it's like there are games out there that are just like, oh, this game crashes after 5 minutes. And that bug for PCSX2, which has been in development for like over a decade, was put in like 7 years ago on their wiki. And it's just like, who knows? You know, you're talking about this weird set of code, this weird hardware set, and then this weird set of code running on this weird hardware set. And that's the thing, is that when they do emulation, it's like you have to be able to run the code that's on the disk because they're not updating the disk. But I don't know. Yeah. Speaking of the discs, we got the PS5 box art. This is a fast one. Bryce, what do you think? Do you care about what box art looks like for the PS5?
You know, so it's like a white background and all the marks are in black. I think it goes with the white and black aesthetic they're doing for the PlayStation 5, right? We're seeing a lot of white, which I think is kind of nice. But a lot of people just prefer their hardware to be dark. It looks exactly the same as a PS4 box otherwise.
Yeah,
fine.
I don't care. I don't need my bookshelf to look pretty, but you know, some people really do care. Apparently, on the Xbox, that what they've done is that it looks the same as the Xbox boxes that are out right now, but it's got this gigantic diamond sticker on it that says like "Made for Series X" that obscures part of the art that's on the front of the box.
Yeah,
weird. Which is apparently no bueno. But let's see, Ghost of Tsushima. We talked about the load times are so good that they had to actually slow them down. There's a really interesting article over on Kotaku that you could read about that, and it's interesting because there aren't any tricks here. They just like did like a shitload of optimization to really only load what you need to get into the scene, and then like stream the rest of it in as you know once you're in there. But the result is amazing, like absolutely amazing.
It's really noticeable when you are like, because any open world game is like this with these crazy long load times, especially at the start, like when you're just loading into the world at like Ghost of Tsushima doesn't have any of that, and that's a really strong technical achievement.
Yep. And then there's also a really interesting article over at Kotaku. I was actually talking about this with Matt, where apparently Ghost of Tsushima is being received very well in Japan. It's kind of a whole article talking about how Japan, you know, when Americans try to make Japan could look at it and go like, oh yeah, that's wrong and that's wrong and that's wrong. But there have been a lot of critics who have been saying that Ghost of Tsushima does a lot of this really right. There's a little bit of, apparently the talking is a little quick and they use sarcasm, which isn't really a thing in Japan. But that a lot of the ways that Ghost of Tsushima presents Japan work very well in Japan. So it's a thing where, you know, it's like a David Cage game trying to make America, and you're just like, oh no.
The really interesting part of that article, I think, was the bit that they pulled from Famitsu, where they say offhandedly like that Famitsu admitted that they don't know if this is what Japan was like back then, which just reminds me like, oh yeah, this game is set almost 1,000 years ago. Like we're talking about a like not just historical, but substantially back in the past, that like this might have been what it was like back then. We're not quite sure.
Yeah.
But I think it's good to hear that Japanese outlets feel that this is a game that handles the subjects well without a lot of bastardization.
Yeah. Speaking of bastardization, let's talk about Deadly Premonition 2. My original transition in my head was like, so there's a good thing about a video game from Japan. Let's talk about a bad thing about a video game from Japan. So Deadly Premonition 2 came out last week. I don't get the feeling that anybody is super happy just in general with Deadly Premonition 2, but there was also a thing that came up. Yes.
I didn't know Deadly Premonition 2 came out. I saw all of these videos, all the funny videos of like, but I assumed that was the port of Deadly Premonition 1, of people saying of like, oh yeah, like this runs like garbage, here's all these weird glitches. And I thought that was playing into it because like the original game didn't run great anyway. It was already kind of a crap game.
Right.
Sorry, don't email me. But I didn't realize that was the new game and that game just came out, Deadly Premonition 2.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not great, I think.
Not super great. Also not super great is okay. So this is a weird one because Deadly. Okay. Let's start at the beginning. Deadly Premonition 2, later on in the game, there is a transgender character, and the main character, I can never remember his name, the agent...
Morgan,
whatever. Francis York Morgan. Yeah. He basically... In the beginning, I watched a whole video on this. He basically makes this, when it first comes up that there's a transgender person, he's like, oh, we need to be all inclusive. We need to respect what other people want to do. Whatever you want to do with your life, that's great for anybody. And then he appears to dead name this character throughout the course of their kind of side quest. Dead naming is the thing where you call somebody by the old name that they used to be known by instead of the name that they would like to be named by. And there's also some really strange, there's some more stuff that is not really consequential to this, or it is consequential, but I don't know that I'm the person to really talk about it, where, this character's whole story is based on all this like weird sexual abuse and stuff that happened in the past. And generally speaking, folks were like, this is not a good look, or it's strange to have a character who's basically saying, preaching trans tolerance, and then in the other side of their mouth, and then turns around and calls this person by the wrong name a bunch of times right in a row after that. In response to this, Swery put out a message where he says, "Dear Deadly Premonition fans, I'd like to tell important message." This is all, he wrote this directly because he wanted to make sure that it was coming from him. "I realized by pointed out from friends I might have hurt transgender people in my scenario. It wasn't intentional. I am really sorry for that. Some scenes will be sanity checked by a team that included diversity, and I will rewrite that scene ASAP. So please continue to support Deadly Premonition. I'm the one writing the scenario." And there's going to apparently be some change to this to sort it out. Now, the other part of this is that there was another Swery game called The Missing, the Return of J.J. Macfield and the Island of Memories. That is a game that came out last year. I've talked about this game a lot. I think that this game is proof that Swery can make really good games, but that that Deadly Premonition is a troll, because this is like a side-scrolling game about a character looking for their girlfriend, and the whole mechanic of it is that you can like break your body can be broken, but you always come back to life. So like if you need to get through a really tight space, you can jump from a high place and break all your bones and then drag your horribly mangled corpse through this small hole you couldn't get through before, and then all your bones crack back together, and then you continue onward. It's a very strange and very interesting platformer. I only played the beginning of it, and but apparently it also has some, it definitely has some LGBTQ themes, but I feel like I've heard that it also has some trans themes in it that were handled a lot better than they were in Deadly Premonition 2. So I think that this is a genuine mistake, something that happened in a translation, something that happened in the writing, or I think that Swery's heart is in the right place in this one, especially because he's come out and apologized and said they're going to do an update. You know,
I think quickly responding to it, quickly accepting responsibility, and saying that he will rewrite those scenes. Hopefully, they redo those VO lines where they use that character's dead name, or there's one of those videos where York changes pronouns and starts referring to her as a him in the same sentence. Like, hopefully, like, I think this is a good step. I would like to see the conclusion of this, but I as a queer man really appreciate Swery responding to it quickly, and we'll see from there.
Cool. Let's see. We also had, this is kind of like the controversy section. We also had a thing last week. This is the strangest. So 2 weeks ago, Bryce, I actually had a story where, Discord posted that they wanted to start moving away from just being gaming focused, and people started speed running the U.S. Army's Discord server to see how fast they could get banned from it. This became a thing that they were doing. Well, now we have another story. Apparently, the U.S. Army has a Twitch channel that they're actually using to recruit people, and they were doing a thing that Twitch has now stopped, where they were doing a quote unquote giveaway for a free controller. But then when you went to the website to enter, it was kind of just a recruiting website for the Army. So it was this really strange bait and switch that apparently Twitch has now said, no, you can't do that.
Well, and that's a very pointed action, right? Like in America, and I'm sure there are similar laws around the world. When you do a giveaway, if you do a contest, there are very specific laws about how you have to treat people who are going through that funnel of being entered for a contest, right? So people would watch on Twitch and they would see a thing that says, hey, get a controller, go to this page. And it was an Army recruitment form, or it was like a lead generating form for the U.S. Army, with no mention of a contest, no mention of odds, no mention of when the contest would end, how many people would win, how many prizes were available, any of that stuff. And that itself is a huge no-no. That is legally a no-no. And that's why you see Twitch really took a strong point on this, because legally it is a fuck-up. And this is the Army. They really shouldn't be getting into that. The other conversation about how any corporate, commercial, institutional element, non-gaming entity uses games to promote themselves is like a whole longer conversation that is not suitable for the rest of the remaining runtime of this podcast. But it is the Army's relationship to the video game industry is much longer than the 2 weeks that this story has been alive. Mm-hmm. And it's scummy. It looks scummy. It feels really scummy.
It's real strange. I don't know. We can't get into this because we're just gonna have to roll through the rest of these stories. But it never occurred to me that the Army would Twitch stream Call of Duty and then create a channel where you got that parasocial relationship with the streamer, and then go, well, I'm a former commander in the special forces. I could show you how to sign up if you want to. That's there's some really weird implications in there that, again, way longer, whole 4-hour podcast series by another channel that knows what the hell they're talking about. Because I'm reporting a story about people in Red Dead Online dressing up as clowns. That's what I'm doing. This is not the place for this particular thing. Apparently, players that were tired of Red Dead Online not being updated have started dressing up like clowns in the game and just kind of walking around and making videos where they clownishly do stuff in weird Red Dead clown makeup. So
how do you know when I guess the last major update for Red Dead was, Jeff? Because as someone who who has spent multiple times getting interested in Grand Theft Auto Online, mm-hmm. and remembering the 2 years it took for them to add heists into Grand Theft Auto Online, mm-hmm. I have no pity for these people who, if they're only waiting a few months for more content, I I get it. It does suck, and been through worse.
Yeah,
been through worse, and we survived through worse.
Yeah, I think that I get it. I think that the main thing is that Red Dead Online probably needs. Yeah, Red Dead Online needs more work than has been put into. Like Grand Theft Auto 5 is still getting content updates pretty regularly, but I think that Red Dead 2 Online still needs quite a bit of work to get it to the place where Grand Theft Auto 5 is, and that may be what the beef is with these clowns. Also, it could just be, I mean, I watched a video like 4 months ago where it was 60 players all trying to carry a bowl of soup across the entire map without spilling it. And it was like, people just, Red Dead Online doesn't have a lot to do. Apparently there was a thing where they did a fashion show. They did a virtual fashion show in Red Dead Online because they felt like they didn't have anything to do. So I don't know what the fuck is going on in Red Dead Online.
That kind of looks like the Star
Lord.
Sure.
Yeah.
Star Lord. Like okay. Yeah. I mean, part of it is like when you look at how whether you would want to use the word inspired or derivative Red Dead Online is by all of these Western images that they're trying to replicate. You wonder how interesting. I don't know. I think saying like we're dressing up as clowns is like a ridiculous self-own. Rockstar doesn't care.
They have your money already.
Bozos, yes.
Well, speaking of horrible bozos, Marvel they've announced that the beta date for Avengers Online is going to be first PS4 pre-orders on August 7th, anybody with a PlayStation 4 on August 14th, and then you could go on all systems regardless of pre-order status on August 21st, and there's going to be a War Table live stream on the 29th. So this month is going to have a lot next month, those are all August dates. Next month is going to have a lot of that Avengers stuff, which will be interesting. I'm still completely unsure as to whether or not there's something about it that doesn't pass the smell test for me, and I've got some ideas about what that might be, but I need to play the game to know why does it seem like it's not going to be a good game. So
yeah, you look at the gameplay video and you like, I guess it looks like a brawler, but like maybe not a great brawler. It kind of looks like the guys from the MCU, but it's like not the same actors and it's not the same look. So what are we doing here?
Right.
What are we doing here?
Right. And then let's just run through the rest of these real fast. No Man's Sky has a survival horror update that makes it a Dead Space, apparently, where you can go into these abandoned freighters. And they've actually done the thing I've been waiting for a long time for, Bryce. There's actually things to shoot at that are not like robot cops trying to stop you from keeping a monster from eating your face off, which is pretty cool. I like the idea of them continuing to add stuff to No Man's Sky, especially when you consider that it's still all included in the base game, right? None of this has been DLC, and this game is so much bigger now than it used to be before. Apparently, this also comes with the ability in the patch notes I was reading to change the color and kind of the coloring of the inside of your freighters to different kind of color schemes and stuff, all of which is great. I think No Man's Sky is definitely one of those things that I love to talk about because I feel like it was a game that came out, it didn't do what it was supposed to, and then they spent like 3 years just making it better and putting more stuff into it.
This is cool. I wonder how many times you will be given the opportunity to do this. I wonder what the reward is on this, whether it's going to be flavor text or materials or whatnot, but it's cool that they have this. It's like, it's all cool. This is a cool thing that should be a part of the larger experience. So good on them.
Yep. Let's see. You pointed me to, this is funny because this was a story that I didn't have, and then you pointed it out, and then there's an update on it. Did you see the update for this story?
No, I don't think I have.
Okay, let's talk about the trailer for Gamer Girl, which is another one of these FMV kind of games that we've seen coming out recently. And this one is you're basically playing as the moderator for a Twitch streamer, a Twitch streaming girl. But then also apparently she'll ask you to like live stream with her when she goes and does, there's like some kind of secret, it's a mystery, what's going on here. Like the base part of it is that you're moderating her chat in the live stream, and then there's also these things where it's like, I'm going to go into this, hey moderator, should I go into this boat by myself? And then you can kind of make the decisions about yes or no. This looks so horrifically cheesy. I don't know, Bryce. What do you think about this?
What I think is weird about this is, I think it plays into the weird fantasy that if you have anything deeper than a surface level relationship in a parasocial relationship, that it will lead into you being a very important person in their lives, which I think is a concern. I think it's cool. Like I think conceptually, like making a story about a female streamer, like totally, I think there's a lot of really interesting stuff there. To say like, okay, well you're the moderator now and you're making like the decisions for her life, and then at the end of the trailer where she's like goaded into that's loud. Sorry.
Sorry. Here, I'll turn this off. There.
Thank you. At the end where she's prodded to go check in on someone, and it becomes kind of the slasher looking thing. That seems to belie other important stories about empowerment that you might have. So, I think I don't have a problem with the concept. I don't even necessarily have a problem with the FMV sort of thing. But I think if you're saying like, here's a video game where you can fulfill your fantasy of liking the girl on the internet you watch so much that she like trusts you and gives you responsibility, and you have like control of her life in your hands. I look at that side-eyed. I just am. I don't. It's not out yet. It wasn't even really announced. This trailer just kind of dropped secretly and was pulled. So I am not here to cast immediate judgment, but I say like these are the things I'm concerned about.
Well, guess what? It's been canceled. It's already been canceled. Apparently, after this trailer went up, the response was very negative, and I actually just saw the. I'm sorry, I didn't actually read all the way through this. I just saw the headline on it that apparently it has. Let's see. It released a trailer, developed, blah blah blah. And so many view this in poor taste. Wales Interactive took to Twitter to defend the game. Okay. And here's the user impact. Blah, 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 boo. Or maybe I'm wrong about this. I don't know. You know what? I can't. Let's see if I can find something here real fast, but.
Because I think the things that I'm seeing on your screen that say Gamer Girl canceled are YouTube videos, which I would expect those to be more cancel culture canceled and not removed, like not decided to unpublish the game.
Yeah, it appears that they might have pulled the trailer down. That might be what we're looking at. Let's see. Wales Interactive has since removed the trailer from its YouTube channel, but it still defends the stance of Gamer Girl bringing up toxic issues with being a female live streamer in a recently released statement. All right, I'm not gonna just like read a thing on here. We'll have to figure out what's going on with this probably next week. But yes, it is very strange, and it seems more like like a low budget kind of horror movie than it does anything making any kind of actually interesting statement or anything. So.
Well, and like, being a woman online, an experience I don't and will never have, seems ghoulish and seems hellish. And so if the game, like, I think that trailer is fine if you lop off the last 30 seconds where she walks to some dude's boathouse alone and it turns into a slasher.
Yeah.
Like, I think you can tell a really interesting story about living a real life as a woman streamer and the dangers of that parasocial relationship without saying like, and she's gonna die. Like, we know that that's a possibility. That's the whole reason it's scary. I'm side eye. I'm looking at it side eye.
Well, how are you looking at this weird Nier Reincarnation trailer? Because I know you were, I think, a bigger Nier fan than I am. You were actually the one who got me to finish Nier 2, so everybody can thank Bryce for getting me to go back and actually play. I played it through once, and you were like, "That's not enough times, man. You got to play it through.
That's not enough time.
Many more times." So this is the phone game that they're making. That's apparently, it's funny because when I first heard about this, I was very kind of eye-rolly about it, but I kind of like this weird idea of a gachapon like RPG character collection battler thing in the Nier universe. Like, it seems, and it also seems like the sort of thing, I don't know, this is the kind of phone game that's like least offensive to me because it's not requiring, you know, reflexes or anything. It seems like a pretty, like something you could play on a relatively medium, like you don't have to have liquid cooled Fortnite phone in order to play this game. I don't know, thoughts?
I did not put together this had a gacha element only because there looks like there's so much narrative parts of this. So I don't know too much about what this game plays like. I think it looks really it looks kind of like a Nier game, but we're seeing like castles in the sky and a lot of imagery that they save for the end of the Nier games, where they do one really cool, wacky sort of locale. So I'm fascinated by what this is. It kind of looks like a turn-based system, but then there's a lot of some platforming elements. I love the story of the two Nier games, and I'll play this on my phone. Sure,
okay,
on my phone.
All right. Let's see. All right, let's wrap this up. The rest of this, I know I've said that like 5 times now. Sorry. Persona 4 has hit 500,000 players on the PC, according to some of the Steam database. Good on you, Persona 4. You should have released this a long time ago, but apparently Persona 4 Golden on the PC is a really, really good port of Persona 4, and it's good that game is now in a place where people can actually play it. So, have you played through
very good
Persona 4?
I've played through, I think, most of it. I don't know that I finished it just because it's ungodly long. But I think Persona 4 is great. I think it's better than Persona 5, but I only say that because I've recently been burned by Persona 5. So that's all I have to say on that.
Okay. I'm going to say that this Lego NES that was unveiled is an interesting thing that I would never in a million years pay for. This is a Lego set that's got an actual old school NES controller, a cartridge that goes into it, a TV with little Mario. It's even got this thing where the background of the Mario level scrolls, and then it's got a little thing controlling Mario to make him kind of jump over stuff. And if you have the Lego Mario and you put him on top of the TV, apparently he'll make all the Mario noises. This is a kind of fun little thing. It's also $230, which seems like an awful lot.
There's a lot of building to this, it looks like. Because, I mean, it even has, like, the front flap open. You build the controller, you build the cartridge, you build the whole casing. And, I think that number sounds right, given how much Lego is here.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. All I know is that there's a lot of things that $200 could purchase me in this life, and this seems like the sort of thing. I don't know. Legos, like there have been some Lego sets that I've been kind of interested in, but I have also not wanted to spend more than $20 on Legos, which gets you pretty much nothing interesting these days when it comes to Lego. So
certainly nothing like a build like this, right? You might get a variety pack, but anytime there's a specialty thing like this where you're building a specific, like all the architecture stuff, like I have a Louvre Lego thing, and that thing was expensive as hell.
Yeah, or even the Lego Mario set that they're putting out. I think there was a thing where they calculated up that if you bought all of them, it would be like $700 or $800 or something like that, which was.
But that's got like electronics in it. The Super Mario Lego World thing. That scene. Don't even get me started about that thing.
Okay. How about I get you started on these 10 DVDs that the Microsoft Flight Simulator is going to come on in Europe if you buy a physical copy. I didn't think this was a thing we still did anymore, but apparently if you want to buy Microsoft Flight Simulator physically, you can, and it comes on 10 discs, and apparently it still needs to be updated according to this story. It's basically just like there's a 90 gig install for the game that then is updated with stuff, and this is just the way to get the initial 90 gigs without having to download it from the internet. But it's still strange. It gives me weird flashbacks to a pile of floppy disks where it was like insert disc 27 of 30. Yeah.
This is we were talking earlier about the PC going from like leading the charge in technology to being a lowest common denominator, and Blu-ray drive, not just Blu-ray drives, but having a disk drive at all is becoming rare. Like, we just got a new top of the line computer at our studio, and it has no disk drive. My computer, I've had this computer here. This is a nice computer that I got 4 or 5 years ago. I think it has a Blu-ray drive in it. It was only like last year that I realized that the Blu-ray drive was never connected and doesn't work. And so like that shows how little I use that thing anyway. So good on them for still making this, but I think even DVDs having optical drive, like the prices will come down so far that the next time you see something like this, that the next step in this is
a USB drive.
A USB drive.
Yeah. Yep. Let's see. We also had the announcement that Indivisible is getting a TV show. I don't know how many people care about this, but Indivisible was one of my very favorite games that I played last year. I think it is absolutely amazing, and I think it would make for a great TV show because it's full of crazy, fun characters in a wackadoodle world with some really good art. And because it's made by the guys that made Skullgirls, it looks fantastic as well, and there's already quite a bit of art and animation they could pull on. So
that's pretty cool. Interesting to see that this might come to NBC's Peacock service, given that I firsthand report on streaming services news, and before this could not tell you an original piece of content coming to Peacock. So that's fascinating. I think you look at the stuff that NBC did with CISO a few years ago, and like CISO was not a good idea, but a lot of the content that they put on there was really, really good. NBC is good at like finding the stuff. So good on Lab Zero.
And I also think I read yesterday that they're already starting to take stuff off of Peacock, right? That like Fast and Furious was on Peacock for a day, and then they pulled it. And then there's like a bunch of like the Matrix movies are all getting pulled off of Peacock within the first week of its inception. There's like a bunch of stuff that's getting yanked off of that service for some reason. So
well, and also Peacock has actually been a thing for a few months now, but only for people who get TV through Comcast or something. So like it like pulled after one day may actually mean like pulled after having been on the beta version of the service for a few months.
Was never supposed to be there in the first place. Or something. And last but not least, if you guys, this is not something that I would have thought would have been as entertaining as it was, but if you want something fun to watch, you could watch Henry Cavill build a PC pretty much entirely to the soundtrack of Barry White. Like, like all of the backing music for this video are different Barry White songs. And it's just... It's just The Witcher building a freaking PC and just kind of going through step by step. I like the point that at the very end he realizes that he's put the that he's got like a thing on the CPU that is measuring the speed, and he put it on upside down. The numbers are all upside down, so then the next day he has to like take it all back apart and flip it because it's like a little screen that's right on top of the heatsink on top of the processor. This is a thoroughly entertaining 5-minute video of watching Henry Cavill build a PC, and I didn't know that I wanted that or would be entertained by that. It also looks like he's doing it in like a weird old English house, like it's got this really gross wallpaper. I don't know. It's very strange. It's very, very strange. Did you actually watch this, Bryce?
I only saw the GIFs of it. I will check this out. I guess it wouldn't load because it was an Instagram thing for me. But man, big hunky Henry Cavill put together a PC. Oh my God, that's a bingo. I think that's bingo. I think if somewhere out there someone has got that on a bingo card, that's good.
And that is it. Super long podcast this week. We're done. We did it.
It's my curse. All the podcasts I go on are very long. Thank you for having me on, Jeff.
Oh, no problem. Tell the people out there in Rage Select Land where they can find you when you're not over here hanging out.
Sure. You can find me on Twitter at Brycas, Brycas, and I do a lot of the streaming, the podcast that we do, as well as some video game streaming on twitch.tv/Night Attack, NIGHT, it's kind of, Friday is usually my big day for doing games there. So check those out.
Cool. And with that, we're going to say mail at rageselect.com is the email address if you want to send in questions. I know we haven't answered questions recently very much, but that's only because we're in the summer of gaming and there are too many things. So send them in, and at some point, we'll maybe have to do like an Oops All Questions show where it's just nothing but user questions for 2 hours. And that's it. Bye!